I just did not want to believe it. One of the things that we encountered in Negros Island, we met an attorney there, and he came up to me during the break or after, something like that, and he said to me, you know, I did not want to believe the Philippines was Ophir. I heard about this. My brother told me about it. My brother is an airline pilot, and this guy was an attorney and a pastor, both. And he said, and I told him right away, there is no way that the Philippines is Ophir. It cannot be. Because if it was, I would already know. I went to seminary. I'm a lawyer. I would know. Now, this is the only position left at this point. Thinking they know, but they don't know. And this attorney came to me, and he said, you know, so my brother hit me with something. He said, well, you're an attorney. Give it its day in court. Watch the videos. And you know what? To his credit, he did. But he said, and he was almost angry. I thought he was going to be mad at me. And he said, you know, I was so angry. And I went and I watched that first video of Solomon's Gold series, and you said that the Philippines is Ophir, and I said, no way. So I went through every verse and every historic reference that you used. And you know what? I couldn't prove it wrong. And then he said, so then I went to the second video, and I was watching about the Queen of Sheba, and I knew that was, no, Sheba did not come from the Philippines. No, she came from Ethiopia. Oops, there's two Shebas in Genesis 10, and one of them is the brother of Ophir. Scholars have missed that. But you know what? This was an honest man, and he was just looking for the truth. And he looked at me and he said, I knew I was going to prove it wrong. And I tested every reference. I tested everything that you guys put out there, and I couldn't prove it wrong. So then I went on to the third, about Tarshish, which is Mindanao, Philippines. And he said, I know that's not true because I heard that's in Spain. No, it's not. It's in the Philippines. It always has been. That has never changed. It doesn't move. How do you lose the land of gold? And then call themselves scholars, right? Is that scholarly? You can lose an earring. You can lose a watch. You probably don't lose your car. You probably don't lose your house. But how do you lose the entire land of gold that they knew for 6,000 years? Now, we've proven this. We have a new book out called The Garden of Eden Revealed, the book of maps. And it is map after map after map that we found from the U.S. Library of Congress, from Wikimedia, from public sources that every scholar and every academic should know. You guys can all be seated, please. And yet they don't know. It's not their fault, they're not being taught. That's the real problem. They're not being taught. And then they take in transpositions that they can't take because there's no truth in that. They don't know their history. They don't know the Bible, unfortunately, and we find that far too often in scholarship because they've accepted positions that they just cannot accept. So the reality is, this guy came back to me. His name was Attorney Lyndon Cana. And he was on Negros Island. Unfortunately, he's passed away since. However, he came to me and he said, I did my research. And I watched Solomon's Gold series over and over and over again. And it's restored my identity as a Filipino. And here he was, a lawyer and theologian, who just months before that would not accept this research. And he said, today, I sponsored this conference. Wow. Wow. You know, There are people awakening all over this country. Some of them are politicians. I'll show you a clip of one. And some of them are in positions of all sorts. And it's great when that happens, but what we need, what the world needs, is for you to awaken. Is for you to realize who you are. This whole journey, it's not about history. It's not even about gold. It's about you. It's about your identity, and when that is restored, wow, prophecy comes to life. This is what Bishop is talking about. He's been saying this for years, I know. And I got to tell you, we are researchers. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a pastor. I'm a researcher. Some call me a teacher, but I'm a researcher. We go through things and we prove them out. And at this point, we have indisputably and overwhelmingly proven that the Philippines is the land of gold in all of history. The Philippines is the land of the Garden of Eden. And why does that matter? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So we were here back in 2018, and then we came again last year. SMX last year, right? But we were here in this building. We were right here in 2018, right? 2019. Sorry, I get my dates wrong. One thing I love about Filipinos is they know exact dates of everything. So I get corrected all the time, and I'm happy for it. It's fine. Because I'm not. So when we were here in 2019, we had such a wonderful time with you guys. I mean, I can't tell you the blessing it was for us in our lives to see so many people awakening at once. Wow. Wow. Because, see, this isn't about me. It's not about Ate. It's not even about Bishop. It is about the kingdom. It has always been about the kingdom. We don't build churches, we build his kingdom. Amen? So as we do, and we realize our identity, in the Philippines especially, everything changes. Now, we have a few things I want to tell you about before I really get started, because we have an exciting announcement. We have a 13-week series, a brand new series that's going to be coming out soon. We haven't launched it yet, so you won't find it on YouTube yet. And you're going to see it not just on YouTube, but many platforms, including our own, which we're working on. So we have a 13-week small group study with a small group study guide. This is free to you. You can download the ebook for free. You can actually even already do that, but you can download the ebook for free. You don't have to buy the print book. We do it all kinds of ways because we have to. It's international. We need to make it available everywhere. And you can go through this study, small group study, for 13 weeks. And it takes you through Solomon's Gold series, which is over 100 videos, right? And usually our format is like an hour long each, right? And I know it's a lot, but that's on purpose. See, because our aim was to prove a position. And we had to, because if we ever did not prove, boy, they would call us down for that. But we prove a position. But in this 13-week series, this is going to be a series where you can share this with your neighbors. You can share this with your friends, your family, even just in your home. We'll have the videos up one at a time, coming very soon. We're just waiting, actually, for our next announcement. Because having been harassed by YouTube, I know you've never had that happen, right? Harassed by Facebook. Our last conference in Davao, by the way, we had 7 posts that Facebook decided weren't allowed to be on their platform. What, Facebook doesn't want people to come to our conference? Tough luck, Facebook. But the reality is, even with all the harassment we've had over the years, and we initially went viral, and I don't think they like that very much, but after all the harassment we've had over the years, it's time for us to establish our own format. So we're working right now, and we're getting ready to launch. I wish we had it ready for today and I could show you, but But it's okay. It's getting very close. These things take time. Unfortunately, Google's trying to block this, but they can't, right? Because there's a First Amendment, especially in the U.S., and they can't get around it. They won't be successful. But we're launching a new app, the God Culture app. You'll be able to download it in the Apple Store and Google Play on your phone or whatever. And you can watch all of our videos there in a safe environment. You can contact us in a safe environment. And if you want to subscribe, unlike YouTube, who you subscribe to YouTube and they don't notify you. They don't let you know when a video comes out, right? So, in fact, I think, Bishop, I think it was maybe 6 months I didn't see you. And after that first conference. And you came to me 6 months later and you asked me, is everything okay? I haven't seen a video for 6 months. It was like, we put out 45 videos in that 6 months. And one of our best friends didn't get notified for a single one. Wow. That's okay. It's okay. We know that is the nature of the world today. Because, see, they don't want you to know who you are. They don't want Filipinos to rise. Because that's what happens when your identity is restored. Now, we also have platforms of course, we're on YouTube, but we've expanded into Rumble, Odyssey. We actually are setting up right now BitChute, Substack, Brighteon. We have an alternative to Facebook, and we actually have a podcast that does pretty well these days. And you can find us on pretty much any pod server that you go to, whatever you use, Spotify, Amazon, anything. And so we're there, and we're diversifying in every way that we can because we know this message has been under attack since we started almost. Why is it so attacked? Because they don't want you to know who you are. They don't want prophecy to come to pass. And yet, it is right here, right now. And they can't stop it. Too many people know this already. So we're on lots of platforms. We also have Solomon's Gold series. And today I'm just doing a very, very, very small brief, right, of many, many tens of hours of video footage where we have really researched this out in every way that we can think of. And that research hasn't even stopped. You know, we have a friend that came to visit from Hawaii. She gave me a book. And you know, we have this finding that the three kings, six or more, but the kings, the wise men, came from the Philippines. How about that? Now I'm going to show you that, so we'll go there. But in this book, can you believe the Vatican Library has a document, and that's what this book is based on. It's a translation of that document. And at the Vatican Library, dated to about 200 AD, that's before the legend of the three kings coming from Babylon and Persia and all of that hit the Catholic Church in 550. 200 AD, they actually have this document that's been translated now into English, and it says that the three kings came from the Far East. That they specifically came from the land of the Garden of Eden. Now, we can prove where that is, and that's what I'm going to deal with today. That's what I'm going to deal with today. The table is set, and now we're going to get into some meat, okay? Are you ready for meat? Amen. The power, we need power to the laptop here. The power didn't get turned on, so. Okay, so Solomon's Gold series is released in English. We also have it in Tagalog for several of the videos, so you can check that out in either. We have a briefs section as well, and it actually has, it's 100 videos. 100 videos! And you know what? That's nothing compared to how much data there is out there. There is so much evidence that the Philippines is the ancient land of gold, Ophir, in the Bible, and the Garden of Eden, that it is absolutely, utterly ridiculous for anybody to even suggest any place else. And we have dismantled everything out there. They've tried. Usually it's wordplay, right? They'll take a word and say, oh, well, that sounds like Ophir, so it must be there. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't Solomon's Navy bring things back from there? And they don't come from that country natively? Well, that doesn't work. It's never worked. So why is that called a theory? Why is that in Bible dictionaries? And that's the real question. We began publishing books about 4 years ago. We now have 11 books published, with the 12th actually already up on Amazon and printing now in the Philippines, the small group study. And I'm not going to talk about those today. We don't have those with us today because it's Sabbath. We don't sell in the Sabbath. So, but we will bring books tomorrow. So we'll have a booth here tomorrow, and you can avail of the books there. But you can also just go to ophirinstitute.com, our website, or even thegodculture.com, and it will lead you there. But we have this new book, the Book of Maps, which has all of these maps over 6,000 years. 6,000 years. The world knew that the Philippines was the Garden of Eden and the land of gold. So why are we even debating? There's nothing to debate. Something that is new in the last 300 years, that's what's in question. So, before I start, a little warning. Just a little warning. Exposure to this revelation may cause brains to explode, right? And since we're in the Philippines, I know you have a saying, so I'll go ahead and address it. And noses to bleed. I'm sorry, I only speak English. I can say things like, grabe, but I'm not very fluent otherwise. But you know what? The Word is the Word. The Word is the Word. And it's time that the Word is restored in our lives. It's time that Filipinos realize who you are and who you've always been. See, this didn't change just because the Spanish came. You were still His people. It didn't change. You can even see, you know, when you look out and you look around at the traditions in the Philippines, things like, circumcision. Why are 91% of Filipino males circumcised? It doesn't make sense. It's not Catholic. The Muslims didn't bring it. Islam is what, 5% of this nation right now? Okay, so what about the other 86%? They're not Muslim. They're not doing it for that reason, so why are they doing it? Because it's an ancient tradition that connects you to who you actually are. Because Filipinos are in the Bible. You are there many times. Many times. Isaiah was obsessed in prophecy with the Philippines. He talks about the isles in the east at the ends of the earth, prophetically rising in the last days. Oh, we are in the last days. And it is time to rise now. What are you waiting for? There is nothing to wait for. We have scripture that says this. I don't have to be a modern prophet because I have the words of Isaiah. I have the words of Ezekiel. I have the words of our Messiah himself saying that the queen, Matthew 12:42, the queen of the south shall rise in judgment with this generation and condemn it. You are going to stand against the new world order. And you are it on all of earth. Everybody else follows the beast, but not the Philippines. This is why we know that when we're hearing big visions like we're hearing here, they witness to our spirits. We know that these are the kinds of things that are going to happen in the Philippines. They may even defy logic. And you might look in doubt at times, but let me tell you, we cannot doubt our Messiah. When he prophesies, it always comes to pass. His word never returns to him void, but accomplishes that which it set out to accomplish. So then we see in Isaiah that the Philippines will usher in the return. I'll cover this a little more later, but I want you to understand why this is so important. The Philippines is going to rise in the last days against corruption, against the New World Order, and it's going to bring the return of the lost tribes of Israel. The Philippines will do that. Specifically, Tarshish. The ships of Tarshish. Tarshish is Mindanao. That's you. That's you. You are in the Bible. We already know you will be successful. We already know what is going to happen. We already know that when Yahushua says you will rise, that you will rise. That is a fact. We also know that in Ezekiel, when Gog of Magog takes over the nation of Israel, that one nation on all of earth stands up. One, the Philippines. Sheba, Tarshish, and Tarshish's brother, Dodan. Wow. That's the Philippines. You have a prophetic destiny beyond any other nation on earth. Any other nation on earth. This is the most significant land. This is the most significant place to live. It's a shame a lot of people feel they need to leave here, and I get why. They're trying to make money for their families and everything else, of course. But the grass is not greener on the other side. And they're scorched earth burning that grass in America and other countries right now. This is where the Filipino will rise. And it's happening even now. There are elements of it. You can see it all over the earth. But I want to share something with you. One of the books that we publish is the Book of Jubilees. And in the Book of Jubilees, we've tested it. When we publish one of these books, we go through and we do a complete Torah test. And we test it. Was it quoted by Messiah? Was it quoted by the apostles? You know, do we see it in the New Testament? Do we see it not just quoted for whatever? No, for significant doctrine. And we find the Book of Jubilees absolutely is. It also has a track that goes back to at least about 150, 200 BC. Right? So it's at least ancient. And it has the directions from Noah, where Noah divides the earth, and Noah leads to the Garden of Eden in the Philippines. That's over 2,000 years old, and we knew that the Philippines was the Garden of Eden. This is fact. There's nothing fictional about it. There's nothing speculative about it. This is as academic as a case can get. But this Book of Jubilees was actually quoted by the temple priest who lived in Qumran. What is Qumran in the Bible? What's in the New Testament? It's called Bethabara. Do you know where that is? That's where Yahushua, Jesus, was baptized. And we found scripture there. Why? Because that is the only legitimate canon of the Bible to the first century. And it was sealed in a time capsule. Some of these caves, like Cave 7, was sealed up in 68 AD, and it was not reopened until about 1947, 48, somewhere in there. So we know nobody touched it. Whatever was in that cave is authentic and is real. This isn't about, maybe somebody planted this, maybe somebody planted that. No, they did not unseal the cave, and they did so very publicly. Then they destroyed it. They destroyed it. They blew it up so that nobody could go back and look at those things. It's amazing. But we still have the Dead Sea Scrolls, and Jubilees is number 6. It's the number 6 most found scroll in the entire Dead Sea Scrolls. Number 3 was the book of 1st Enoch. And many people don't realize that. These two books were very important to those temple priests. See, they were exiled from Jerusalem from the temple. The temple was attacked. They were exiled to Qumran, which in ancient times, what the Bible calls it, is Bethabara. Even Joshua gives us geography. He specifically says that Bethabara is in Qumran by location. So this book is found there, and it's something that we should at least take seriously, if nothing else. I'm not asking you to conduct a council. We're not going to take a vote today and induct this into Bible canon. In fact, I wouldn't let you do that. You need to do your research. Read the book. It's free. bookofjubilees.org. You can download it. It's free. You don't have to purchase anything. And that's pretty much all of our books. So we then find that this book of Jubilees is quoted by Moses in Genesis. What? Oh, yeah. Moses tells a story. This is the story of Jacob. Jacob is dying, and he calls Joseph in, and he says to Joseph, I'm going to give you an inheritance above all of your brothers. Where did this money come from? It's the money that I exacted, the tribute that I took from the Amorite kings. Now, here's the problem. You will find that Moses, in fact, did fight the Amorites, but that's the first account. This is Jacob. More than 400 years before that. That account does not exist in Genesis. But it exists in the book of Jubilees. It's chapter 34 of that whole book. What is Moses quoting? He's quoting the book of Jubilees. So this is something I encourage you all, just take a look at it. Check it out. But here's why I go there. Here's what the book of Jubilees tells us. And by the way, Genesis has always said the same thing, we just weren't reading it right. At least I wasn't. It says, and he, Noah, knew the Garden of Eden is the holy of holies and dwelling of Yahuwah God. What does that mean? That means the Philippines houses the Holy of Holies. The very dwelling of Yahuwah on all of earth is here under your feet. I guess he's done now, but Kibeloy makes some big claims that he never supported, unfortunately. But one thing that he said was that the Garden of Eden was here. And he was not completely wrong about that point. Amazing. He had no idea. And a lot of people don't, but when you research this, you can find this out. Now, this isn't a surprise because in Genesis 3:8, we see that Adam and Eve heard the voice of Yahuwah Elohim in the garden, right? Well, that means his presence was there, right? He was walking in the garden, it says. So he was physically in the Garden of Eden because he physically inhabits it. And the Garden of Eden is here in the Philippines. This is why Filipinos are the happiest culture on all of earth. They can't keep you down. They came here, they conquered, they raped, they stole, they killed. Wait a minute. They killed, they stole, they destroyed. Whose fruits are those? Those are not the fruits of Jesus, Yahushua. Those are the fruits of Satan from John 10:10. Ouch. They did not bring Jesus to the Philippines. You already knew him. You already had a relationship with him, and I will prove that to you today. Even Josephus says that the Garden of Eden was planted in the east. Now, he lived in Israel at one time, so he knew that Israel is not the east. That is ridiculous. When a Bible writer writes that something is east and they're writing in Israel, they do not mean that Israel is east. Never. They mean it's that way. At least. Now, we have exact directions, and we have maps over 6,000 years. We also know, and I want to deal with this on the front end, the Garden of Eden is a real place. And the Garden of Eden still exists. Some say, oh, but the Garden of Eden was taken up by a spaceship. Okay, you can believe that. You can believe whatever you want. But don't call that Bible, because it's not there, right? It's Kabbalah, but it's not Bible. The Bible says that the Garden of Eden is still there 3 times in Revelation. It will be reopened to us on the day of judgment. And we will once again eat of the tree of life, just like Adam and Eve. That is our future. There's a lot of bad things that are going to happen to the world. There's no doubt about that. When we read Revelation, sometimes it looks a little scary. But the reality is, that's not the story. See, the world wasn't made for sinners. The world was not made for the unrighteous, so they have to go. The world was made for the righteous, the believers. Not perfect, but nevertheless, those with hearts and a relationship with Him. So, when we go through all of this data, you're going to see quite a few things. But one of the things that I want to start with here is the first Sabbath. So where was the first, thank you, Richie. Where was the first Sabbath? The first Sabbath was in the Philippines because it is the land of creation. Well, I must be nuts to say that, right? Nope, we prove it. And I'll show you some of the references today. However, check this out. You know, you saw the Indiana Jones theme to our 13-week series. I'm even wearing the hat there in the studio. But check this out. See, Hollywood always has to come up with man-made, contraptions and things like that. But see, here's the reality. The Garden of Eden is guarded by at least two, because it says cherubim. I am is like an S in English, in Hebrew. It's plural. So there's at least two cherubs guarding the Garden of Eden. And they have a flaming sword that turns in every direction, not like those razor blades. This is real. So no one's going to enter the Garden of Eden, right? And no, we haven't entered the Garden of Eden, and no, we haven't tried, and no, we're not going to, right? Because I kind of like having my head attached. Because I won't be able to duck. It's not like that. This is real. No man enters the Garden of Eden today. We can't. It won't be reopened until the day of judgment. However, when you learn the location of the Garden of Eden in all of history and the land of gold, then you restore prophecy. And that's where all of this goes, so we'll get there. Now, we also see in the book of Jubilees, chapter 3, verse 32, it's repeated in chapter 4, verse 29. And on the new moon of the 4th month, Adam and his wife went forth from the Garden of Eden, right? So this was the exile from the garden. And they dwelt where? In the land of Elda. Wow, that even sounds Filipino. Imelda? Maybe. But we don't need that, because here's what we know. In the land of their creation. See, Charles Darwin even admitted in his own book that he was wrong. At the end of it, he says, the fossil record, in other words, science, does not support my theory. In other words, he said, I don't have a theory. He shouldn't have published a book, because when you get to that point, you just disproved yourself. And yet we treat that in academia as if he ever said anything worthwhile. He did not. The Bible has always had a ground zero for creation, and it's in the Philippines. This is where man was made. When you reach down and you pick up the soil of the Philippines, you are literally holding the soil from which Adam and Eve were created. Think about that. This land has mattered since the beginning, and you still do. Don't you ever let anybody tell you you're a third world citizen. No, you are not. Americans are third world citizens. They have debt. Most Filipinos do not. That makes them poor, especially in biblical definition. It doesn't work. Now, you then go on, and when you read this in 2 Chronicles, it talks about the gold that King Solomon went. And we're going to talk about Solomon in a minute. Solomon went, and he fetched gold for the temple. And he took that gold, and he overlaid the walls, right? So the walls, just like these pillars here, were overlaid with gold. Imagine that. And then some academic says, well, if I can't find archaeology of the temple, then it never existed. Okay, but let's be clear, you're not a scholar, you're stupid. Because they're looking for something you're not going to find. They didn't leave that gold sitting there for everybody to come and look at like a museum. They took it. It's the most valuable resource on earth almost, especially in that age. So 2 Chronicles mentions something. It says the gold of Parvaim. Wait, but it's the gold of Ophir according to 1 Chronicles. So which is it? Ophir or Parvaim? It's both because it's the same place. The Bible is brilliantly written to preserve this information. Parvaim in Hebrew actually is a reference to Oriental regions. Now, when a Bible writer calls something the Orient, they're not talking about Israel. They're not talking about Saudi Arabia. That's not the Orient. It doesn't work. So Oriental regions, and very specifically, this is Sephar, the Mount of the East. Parvaim, Sepharvaim, same thing. We also find that in Genesis Apocryphon in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where it says that Enoch actually went into the Garden of Eden, and then Methuselah, his son, came to visit him in the Garden of Eden. He didn't enter, but by the entrance. And that land was called Parvaim, or Parvaim, same thing. V, W in Hebrew are interchangeable even in modern Hebrew, but the reality is there is no V in ancient Hebrew. It doesn't exist. It's a W. And we know that because in order to make these letters be a V or a W or a J or a Y, right, in order to do so, you would have to have the sound in the language, and there's no V sound and there's no J sound in ancient Greek, Hebrew, Latin, or Aramaic. None of them. In fact, let's go further. There's no J or V in Old English, Old German, or even the ancient French language. They didn't have it. It wasn't until the 1500s that these letters were introduced. So we see them in our Bibles. It's almost like the translators were obsessed, especially with J's. Every time you see a J in your Bible, it's not a J. It's always a Y. It can't even be pronounced in Hebrew, not legitimately. So then we see another gold, and it's the gold. It says silver spread into plates is brought from Tarshish, from Mindanao, Philippines. And gold of Upaz, the work of the workman and of the hands of the founder. Blue and purple is their clothing. They are all the work of cunning men, Filipinos. How do I know this is the gold of the Philippines? The word Upaz is the gold of the Pisan River. The Pisan River is the first river from Eden that surrounds the land of gold, pearl, and the onyx stone. Philippines, number one in gold in all of history. That's fact. We prove that. Even today, according to the New York Times, according to the Wall Street Journal, according to pretty much every economic journal out there, they released a report within the last decade or so, and it showed that the Philippines, on all of Earth, still today, after a 3,000-year gold rush, you're still number 2 in gold on all of Earth. China is 30 times larger than the Philippines, and they don't have as much gold as the Philippines has. Now, I'm not talking about Yamashita gold, because that whole legend is not really completely true anyway. See, the Japanese knew they were attacking the land of gold. They needed money They needed oil at that time, but they needed money to buy the oil. So they came to the Philippines. Why? To get the gold. So yeah, you might find gold with Japanese symbols, but that's Philippine gold most of the time. Because they knew you don't have to, if you're going to the land of gold, you're not going to bring a lot of gold. Not when you know you're going to conquer it. No way. So none of these things have ever made sense. Now, the one other thing, and this is something I don't think I got to share with you before, so I'm covering some different material today for a reason, and we'll get back to some of the other things too. But check this out. The Philippines, according to news report after news report, is called the center of marine biodiversity on all of Earth. Number one, by far.
We begin our story where the journey started, in the Philippines.
So basically, that was an NPR report, and as soon as we ran that on our channel, it disappeared within a week. You can't even find that video on the internet, but I can tell you, that wasn't me speaking. And no matter what I do, I don't think I could look like that. Certainly couldn't be that beautiful. So, anyway, CNN, the Carpenter Report, we've seen this over and over again. The Philippines is not only part of the center, but is in fact the epicenter of marine biodiversity with the richest concentration of marine life on the entire planet. What does that mean? Guess what we just found scientifically? We found the origin of species. Because you see, there was a flood. And in the flood, Noah and humans were all but wiped out except for what was on the ark. Land animals wiped out except for what was on the ark. But see, not marine life. Marine life survived the flood, largely. So if you want to scientifically find the origin of species, Charles Darwin, you go to marine life. The most biodiverse marine life on all of the planet is the Philippines. Ground zero for creation. Wow. This is why Dr. Jose Rizal wrote My Last Farewell. And he calls the Philippines my adorned land, region of the sun caressed, pearl of the Orient Sea, our Eden lost. He knew the Philippines was the land of the Garden of Eden. He even invokes part of Genesis 2 because the Pisan River is surrounded by, it surrounds the land of the Philippines, which is the land of gold, number one in all of history. Pearl. Ooh. The largest pearls in all of history come from Palawan, Philippines. Number one, number two, number three, number four, number five, number six. You keep counting, you're still going to say Palawan, Philippines. This is the land of pearl. You're even mapped in ancient times. In 1492, the map that Columbus used labels Palawan Island as Thilis, which is the name of the land of pearl in all of history. So it's not even just about the gold. You have all the resources. There is not a number two. There is not another option. There is nobody else to consider the Philippines as Ophir and the Garden of Eden. And the land of creation. Scientific fact. They're just not looking at the science. We also know that there are names here on some of the islands that don't make any sense. There's this island called Mindoro. Wait a minute, that's two Hebrew words. It basically means species of the generations, the origin of species. Now they tell me, oh, but that was named Mina de Oro by the Spanish. Yet there's not a single Spanish document in origin that calls it Mina de Oro. In fact, Mina de Oro means gold mines. The Spanish wrote from their first visit in Mindoro, there are no gold mines. So then they named it gold mines? These things don't make sense. These things don't connect. But when you look at it in Hebrew, it makes perfect sense. Because the Verde Island Passage, which is right next to Mindoro, actually has the highest concentration of marine life on the planet. In fact, there's more marine life in that little narrow area than any place else on Earth and on all of Earth combined. All. Now, a lot of this is that's maybe a 10-year-old study. It was 120 marine biologists that came to the Philippines, and they studied this. This is their data, not mine. But that's what they say. Then you have Palawan. Wait a minute. That's 2 Hebrew words. That doesn't make any sense. Pala means extraordinary in Hebrew. Awan, oh, wait a minute. According to the book of Jubilees, Adam named his first daughter Awan. Wow. Whoa. You mean there's an island in the Philippines named for the first daughter of Adam? Ooh. How about that? It also means beautiful to look at. And, even Travel and Leisure magazine has named Palawan the most beautiful place on earth for many years in a row now. And you can go look it up. They get the award all the time. That's what they say. But here's the thing. Dr. Jose Rizal said, "He who does not know how to look back at where he came from will never get to his destination." And we hear many times, if you don't know history, then you're destined to repeat it. And that's the reality. They have been taking the history away from the Philippines. Taking it away. The schools aren't even teaching it. Many children come to me and say, "I didn't know there was history of the Philippines before Magellan. Because I was taught there's nothing." Nothing? There's hundreds of documents. There's even maps for thousands of years before Magellan that show the Philippines as a land of gold and the Garden of Eden. But let's deal with something quickly. One of the big things that people ask is, wait. Okay, yeah, land of gold, yeah. I've heard that. In South America, they have El Dorado, right? El Dorado is fiction. Absolute, complete fiction. El Dorado comes from a local chieftain who rolled around in gold dust. That's it. That's the legend. That's it. Now, it became embellished, and all of a sudden now we hear that they had golden cities and golden temples and gold everywhere. No, they didn't. That is a lie. That is fiction, and that is easily provable to be fiction. Yet they'll create a movie about that, but they will not create a movie that the Philippines is Ophir. The true land of gold in all of history, historically documented and documented in the Bible since Genesis 2. Wow. But that's okay. We will. We're working on a project right now, so let's pray for that. But the gold of Ophir is real. We know this because in Israel they found archaeology of the gold of Ophir. Here it is. This is a pottery shard. And it says, gold of Ophir, 2 or 4 Beth Horon, 30 shekels. So 30 shekels of gold was inside this piece of pottery. And it's actually, first of all, it affirms that King Solomon was a real guy. You'd be shocked how many people have come to our channel and said, "You can't even prove that King David and King Solomon even lived." Are you kidding? Really? Because if there's a king in Persia and they find one writing on one stone, even a fragment of his existence, they immediately declare, that's history. He existed. But yet, you see David and Solomon documented thousands of times. And that's not history. That's not academic, folks. That is not scholarly. It is, the only word for it is stupid. It has always been. They're not thinking, they're not trying to think. They're trying to disprove the Bible, but they can't. They never have, and they never will. These are the kinds of finds that prove the Bible. Because Ophir was not just a real place, it was really a place for gold. Because it says so. It proves that King Solomon really did build a navy and go to a real place called Ophir, not a fictional place. This jar doesn't say, this is the fictional gold of Solomon, does it? No. This was the gold of Ophir. And the project that it's earmarked for, Beth Horon, is a city built by King Solomon. So this is archaeological fact and proof and evidence that Solomon was real and that Ophir is a real land. It's important that you know that because it is the Philippines. It is the true history of the Philippines. Now here's the other thing. We also have archaeology in Israel and their neighbors. There are two steles, two stone carvings. One is in the Louvre Museum, the most famous museum probably on earth, in France. The other one is in a museum in Israel. These are documented fact. They're not disputable. And yet they both mention King David and his lineage. And they were enemies of Israel. So they would not record a fictional king that they fought with. It doesn't make any sense. This has always been historic fact. This is a real place because the Philippines is a real place. And your history is real history. Don't let them tell you otherwise. You know, even we have professors that follow this research. We have doctors, we have PhDs that follow this research. But when they mention Ophir in their academic, historic forums, they get banned from their own forums. For even mentioning the word Ophir, you can't even mention it. What does that tell you? That tells you they have such a weak position against this find that they can't defend it. They can't even make a case. They have to just shut it down. And this is where we are. They've been trying to shut this down for years, but they cannot. There are already too many people here. They can't stop this. The flame has been ignited, and it only grows. It only grows. We then find that Solomon's defense wall in the days of King David and Solomon, about 1000 BC, they found pottery with it so they can date it accurately. They found that Israel was a very sophisticated society with a large defense wall, so they had large defenses. So when they go and they say, oh, but you can't even prove that Israel was ever even really a big country. It was just a tribe. It was just a village. Hello. They aren't academic. They're not scholarly. They're not representing the facts at all. They're ignoring them, which is exactly what Peter warned. 2 Peter 3 says that in the last days would come scoffers, pursuing their own lusts, their own desires. And because of that, they'll deny three things, Peter says: creation, the flood, and the deity, the godhood of Messiah. Well, Bible scholars do that all the time today. We're sifting through Bible scholarship every day, and we're finding so many things. These guys, many of them, they're not even Bible believers, and yet they set church doctrine in most of the traditional churches. That is sad, but it's true. We also know that King David was real because King David is mentioned 1,000 times in the Bible. 1,000. Not one, not 12, 1,000. Wow. Oh, and by the way, when we know about an author in ancient times, we have his book published today, well, we call that history. Oh, but not with David. He just published the book of Psalms. And then you have Solomon with the same thing. Solomon published at least 3 books. The case can be made for 4 and maybe more. But we know in our modern canon there are 3 books written by King Solomon. And yet they say, oh, well, you can't even prove he existed. Are you kidding? That's not academic. That's laughable. It always has been, and it always will be. And the same goes for him. He's mentioned in the Old and New Testaments many times. So this is not a shocker, but for scholars, the question is, how do you lose the land of gold, right? Our textbooks are wrong. Our textbooks do not have valid history. What do they have? They have exactly what we were warned they would have. They have a history rewritten by the conquerors. That's where we are. It's time to take that history and wipe it out and restore the true history of the Philippines. Because you are the most significant nation on earth. Check out this clip. This is one of the coolest things. This is from the Senate floor.
Linggong ito na ang Pilipinas
There we
daw
go.
ang posibleng lugar sa Biblia na kung tawagin Ophir o lupain ng ginto. Totoo man ito o hindi, noon pa man sa ating kapuluan, may mga nakasisilaw ng yaman ng kasaysayan.
Kung hindi si Magellan na nakadiskubre ng Pilipinas o tawagin na natin munang 7,000 magagandang isla, our history books are wrong.
Agaw atensyon ang privilege speech na ito ni Congressman Dan Fernandez ng Santa Rosa nito lang July 31. Binuksan niya ang diskusyon tungkol sa matagal nang pinagdedebatihan online na ang tinutukoy di umano na Land of Ophir sa Biblia na isang lugar na pinaniniwala ang sagana sa ginto. Posible raw na Pilipinas?
Yes, it is.
Naging basehan daw ng kongresista ang Colección General de Documentos Relativos a las Islas Filipinas o General Collection of Documents Relating to the Philippine Islands.
The navigational guide nung sila po'y nagsimulang maglayag started from the Cape of Good Hope in Africa to India, to Burma, Sumatra, Moluccas, Borneo, Sulu, to China. Then, finally, sa tapat daw ng China ay pulong-pulong mga isla, muchos de oros, mayaman sa ginto. Ang according to Pagkapeta, ang pangalan ng mga islang ito, Ophir. Tayo lang naman po ang 7,000 isla sa tapat ng China.
Yes. Amen. So are we crazy? No. Well, maybe, but not over that. You know, this is the funny thing. Academia treats this topic as if, oh, they say the Philippines is Sophia, they must be crazy. Really? Okay, there's a representative. I'll show you more. Because there's even more who've come out and affirmed our research. They may not give us credit, but we don't care. The point is, this is about the kingdom. This is about restoring his history of the Philippines, and I don't care where it comes from. This affirms our research, and that is what really matters ultimately. We know that the New York Times, Forbes magazine, the Wall Street Journal, reported that the Philippines is number 2 in gold in all of history. So, to call the Philippines the land of gold is more like saying, duh, of course it is, because South Africa has no history of ancient gold. See, that's a problem, and it's number 1. Their universities in South Africa actually tell you that they didn't even discover gold panning until 1000 AD. That's 2,000 years after Solomon built a navy on the Red Sea to go to the Philippines to get gold and other resources. This has all been right there, easily documented. And saying South Africa is Ophir is also ridiculous because Ophir is a real guy. And he's from Shem. And Shem didn't inherit Africa. That's Ham. So they even got the wrong son, the wrong territory. It doesn't remotely work. These are laughable propositions, but when you cut through all of that, you'll find the facts lead one place. You see, we happen to believe the Bible. We happen to believe the Word. And that's where we start our foundation in research. But even if you took that part out of our research, the academic facts are overwhelming and indisputable. We could debate any PhD very easily, because the facts are on our side. And we've offered, but no one will take us up on it. I wonder why. Because they can't win the debate. The Philippines is Ophir. The Philippines is the Garden of Eden, period. There is no other option. Now, we follow the edict from 1 Thessalonians 5:21. Prove all things. hold fast that which is good. And this is something we should all do in life, no matter who we are. Because if we don't, we will be deceived. We live in a strong delusion. We live at the end times when things are so messed up. I mean, just watch the news. Just watch the news. And you'll hear all kinds of narratives that are absolute lies. And these are from very smart people you would think would be able to see through it. But see, they can't because they live in a box. They live in a paradigm of deception. This is the challenge for Bible scholarship today on many levels, but especially regarding Ophir in the Garden of Eden. There are literally folks that try to argue with us and they say, no, the Garden of Eden has to be in Israel. Okay. We'll listen. Why? Because Israel has the Gihon Springs, and the second river from Eden is named the Gihon. Right, river. Can you finish the sentence? River is not a spring. Oops. That's a major, major mess up on the part of many scholars who are not even trying. The Gihon Springs is all of 325 meters long. Right? Not much longer than this stage. It's a straight line. It surrounds nothing. Genesis 2 says it has to surround Africa. It has to surround the whole land of Ethiopia. The whole land of Ethiopia is Africa. And by the way, when did Ethiopia move into Israel? Oops, didn't happen. These are basic, simple, foundational geographic mistakes that scholars are making, not because they're illiterate, but because they're ignorant. They're ignoring the facts. They're ignoring the truth. But the truth is still there, and the truth will still shine through. So where is Ophir? King Solomon built a navy on the Red Sea. Wait a minute, that already tells us a lot right there. He built a navy on the Red Sea. I'll show you a map in a minute. But that means he did not build a navy and a new port on the Mediterranean Sea. And yet there's an assumption, even by one of my favorite scholars, Dr. Michael Heiser, used to go around saying, unfortunately he's no longer with us, but he used to go around saying that Tarshish, well, that must be Spain. Okay, Doc, why? Oh, because in Spain there is a place there called Tartessus. Okay, that's all you got? Yeah, that's all he got. That's it. That's all they do. They base entire findings on such shallow evidence that is not evidence at all. Because the word tar is there, but Tarshish is not even in the word. But it doesn't matter because the king of Spain hired explorer after explorer after explorer to go to the Philippines as Tarshish and Ophir. You just saw Representative Fernandez talking about a document created about 1519, just before Magellan, by the Spanish government. That was not created by some guy down the street, somebody just operating independently. It was a Spanish government document, and it's a map, and it leads to Ophir and Tarshish in the Philippines. Because it always was. This is not a mystery at all. These guys well knew this. So check this out. So Solomon's navy goes to Ophir, they fetch gold, and then they bring it back to Solomon. When they bring it back, what else happens? That's when the story of the Queen of Sheba happens. Her story starts in the next chapter, but it starts with and. Meaning it's a continuation of the trip where Solomon built a navy on the Red Sea. They went to Ophir, they fetched gold, and when the Queen of Sheba heard of the name of Solomon's God and the wisdom of Solomon, she came. Well, who did she hear it from? Read the verse before. His navy, of course. And Sheba happens to be the brother of Ophir in Genesis 10. That's the right Sheba, not the one from Africa, which is in the wrong territory because it's from Ham, not Shem. So we look on the Red Sea here, and you can see where this was built in Ezion Geber, right? Why would you build a port on the Red Sea? I mean, Solomon was wise, right? We do believe that, right? Many scholars don't seem to because they think he took a trip 4 times longer around Africa to get to Spain. When his admiral, Hiram, it's in the previous verses, Hiram is king of Tyre, Phoenicia, which is just north of Israel on the Mediterranean. And the Phoenicians ruled the Mediterranean seas at that time. So wait a minute, so Solomon hires that guy to go down to the Red Sea to start a new route to go all the way around Africa 4 times longer with a brand new navy and a brand new port for what? To trade with people he already traded with? Now that is not wise. That is to call Solomon unwise. It makes no sense. It never has. They were heading to the east, to the Philippines. Now we know this because we know that maps have demonstrated this for 6,000 years. And the Hebrew leads there in all kinds of ways. History does as well. But see, there was this guy named Eber in Genesis 10:25. And Eber had 2 sons. Now, we all know his first son because his first son is named Peleg, right? Now, in Peleg's days, the whole earth was divided. Now, that literally is talking about Noah's division, his mapping of the earth, dividing the inheritance between his 3 sons as any good father would do, right? Now, when he did so, he also located the Garden of Eden in the Philippines. And we map that out in the book of Jubilees. It's detailed directions over 2 chapters. And it is so specific, you really can't get it wrong. You can't mess it up. And the way they mess it up is they go in and they pick a direction out and say, oh, well, that means he must be there. Well, wait. Where was he before that? Where was he before that? Where's he after that? Right? Let's apply a scientific method. Let's map this out. We did that. I think we're the first to ever map it out, which is sad. This is a document that's over 2,000 years old, the book of Jubilees. Found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Massive find. But it's been in circulation all along. It's never been out of circulation. So why on earth wouldn't Bible scholars at least look at it for geography, because it is a book of geography? Well, clearly, willing ignorance, as 2 Peter said. So Eber had 2 sons. So Peleg's one. Now you know Peleg because he's the ancestor of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Israel. See, we get the word Hebrew from Eber. Hebrew is the plural, Eberim, of Eber. In fact, if you want to express it in English, the word Hebrew should be Ebers, right? You're Ebers. That's what a Hebrew is. But see, Eber had another son. So there are other Hebrews out there, not just Israelite Hebrews. In fact, Abraham was not an Israelite, right? There's no Israel until Jacob. So now, when you look at this, he had a brother named Joktan. Now, Joktan's somebody we don't really know much about. He's not mentioned much in the Bible. But Joktan had sons. He had 13 of them, but 3 of them are notable because his son was Ophir, Sheba, and Havilah, which is the name of the ancient land of gold in Genesis 2, surrounded by the Pison River. And it says in Genesis 10:30, and their dwelling was from Mesha as thou goest unto Sephar, a mount of the east. This tells us actually everything. It tells us a migration occurred. They lived in a place called Mesha. Where is that? That's easy. There's a Mashhad, Iran, to this day. And it is exactly where Josephus placed it, in fact. So Bible scholars should know this, right? So they lived in Iran, and then a migration occurs as thou goest unto, where? Sephar, the mount of the east. Where's that? Sephar is a word in Hebrew for the tree of life. which is where? In the Garden of Eden. Where's that? In the Philippines. The Mount of the East, wow, is a reference, according to the book of Jubilees, to one of 4 holy places on earth, and happens to be located within the Garden of Eden. So this is a double reference to the Garden of Eden. The land of gold and the Garden of Eden are one, and they're both found in the Philippines. So then you see again the Queen of Sheba is from that Sheba, because there's 2 Shebas, and I haven't seen a scholar yet who has even taken that into consideration when they teach us about the queen from Ethiopia. Oh, that legend, it comes from the Kebra Nagast. In that legend, that queen has the legs and the hoof of a goat. That's not Bible. She had an affair with Solomon. That's where we hear that story. The Bible doesn't say they had an affair. It says she came, she asked tough questions, she gave, and she left. That's it. End of story. Solomon was married to an Egyptian queen, and he loved her. Read Song of Solomon. That's his Egyptian wife. She even says, I am black and comely. So you know that she's black. She's certainly not the Queen of Sheba. And there's some that have tried to make that association as well, and it's not Bible. So we know that Josephus goes there. We even know that maps show us that Mysia is in eastern Iran. Mysia on these 3 maps in the 1400s and 1500s. So this is not a lost reference. This is not a shocker. It's not a surprise. Again, Josephus preserved it. We know this word eastward, Kadim in Hebrew, leads to the Garden of Eden, because that's the Hebrew word used there. The garden was planted in Kadim, eastward. And it's also the same word for the Mount of the East. Why is it translated Mount of the East one time and really just east the other time? Doesn't matter. Translations are fine, because it is in the east and it is the Mount of the East, both. Now, in our research, and I can't possibly take you through these kinds of details, but you will find we actually posit a very strong position that the Mount of the East is where Bishop was raised. Camaguan Island. How about that? And we had a chance to go there with these guys, and that was awesome. But here's what this word Kadim means, and this is why it matters. It means east, antiquity, front, that which is before, aforetime. Before time? What's before time? The land of creation. It's in the Hebrew word. It's been there all along. These references all tie, in the Hebrew especially. It all comes together. Ancient, from of old, earliest time, beginning, Mount to the east, Mount to the orient, eastward to and toward the east. So we know that the Mount of the East is the far east. Right? And we could take that further. I'm going to show you maps in a minute, and these will blow you away. These will really blow you away. I've never covered these here before. It's in our current book, and it blew us away. I was in tears most of the time when we were finding these maps, because I just couldn't believe that all these maps existed. We never actually looked for them before. We had several, but we didn't really take that as a project and say, well, wait a minute, just how many maps can we find that show the Philippines as the Garden of Eden and the land of gold? Well, we found over 80. Over 80 over a 6,000-year period. Wow. We also know Safar means towards a numerous population. And on the earth, 60% of all the earth lives in the Orient, lives in the Far East. So even as a reference from that standpoint, it makes perfect sense. We also know the Bible is very specific about where Tarshish is. This has never been a remote mystery, and it certainly can't be Spain. Why can't it be Spain? Because the Bible tells us the resources that come from Tarshish, and they don't come from Spain. Duh. That should be really easy for a scholar. They should have looked at that first, and they didn't. That's called negligence, gross negligence, really. Now, when you look at 2 Chronicles 9:21, it tells you that Tarshish The king's ships went to Tarshish, Mindanao, Philippines. They came here. With the servants of Hiram, every 3 years. Now, this also tells you how far the journey was. Because 3 years round trip with time to plant and harvest, right, and trade, that would be a trip that would lead you to the area of the Philippines. We've tested that. It comes right out there. Can't be India, it's too close. It can't be Saudi Arabia, that's 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The Bible says 3 years. That's not a little off, right? And that's what we find. Most of these things are in that kind of thing. Okay, so every 3 years, once came the ships of Tarshish, bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. These are not resources of Saudi Arabia. These are not resources of Spain or Britain. These aren't even resources of Ethiopia. They failed the test. Most of them fail more than 50% of just a resource test. This is not difficult. And yet, academia and scholarship still holds these positions that are just totally nonsense. If you look, here's our test. We publish this in our books. And you can see that all these countries making claims, they fail outrageously. Now, as you get closer to the Orient, in India, it starts to match more, but it still doesn't match. It still fails. The Malay Peninsula, Indonesia, you're getting really close to the Philippines, so no surprise. The resources match, but they still fail. See, they don't have ample history that they are Ophir and Tarshish and Sheba, for that matter. The Philippines does, because you have map after map, for one thing. But here's one of the biggest things. One of the biggest indicators in these resources is in Jeremiah 6:20. And Jeremiah says, "To what purpose cometh there to be incense?" Frankincense is the actual Hebrew word. "From Sheba." So you're like, wait a minute. Frankincense comes from Ethiopia. Does it? No. The Philippines has frankincense. They call it poor man's frankincense. It comes from the pili tree. They call it Manila LME. The perfume companies come here to buy their frankincense. It's a lot cheaper. And we have several articles that show you that Dior, Cartier, a lot of these big brands, Louis Vuitton, they're coming here and they are buying their frankincense in the Philippines. See, you're the origin of frankincense. You're the origin of gold. Did you know when Adam was exiled from the garden, and we get this from a book called The Cave of Treasures. It's not scripture, but this is still interesting nevertheless. It says that Adam offered in his sacrifice the next morning gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Wait, that sounds familiar. Because the Queen of Sheba brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh from the same land, the Philippines. She was following the covenant. She was following the biblical way that you give to the temple, not to Solomon. She was giving biblically. And then you have the 3 kings, 6 or more really, and they brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh from the Philippines. Now, when you look at this, though, there's another resource mentioned here in this passage. Not only frankincense, but with it they brought the sweet cane from a far country. Sugar cane? Wait a minute. Did you know that Ethiopia doesn't have sugar cane natively? That their record is they didn't start growing it until the 1600s? Oops. The 1600s, that's 2,600 years too late. This is the story of Solomon and Sheba. See, because it's the Philippines. Did you know, according to the Republic of the Philippines, your agricultural department says that you've been growing sugarcane in this country since 2,000 years before King Solomon came. You are the Sheba of the Bible. You are the Sheba of the Queen of Sheba, not Ethiopia, not the goat lady. No, thank you. So we tested the ships, and I told you about what we got there, but we have the actual data because Josephus tells us how fast they went, how much cargo they could hold. We know all of those factors. This is really scientifically, you can prove this out to such a degree that it really cannot be debated at all. We find that the biblical references lead to isles, not one isle. Okay, last I checked, India is not an island, but the Bible says Ophir is. So India is not Ophir. Saudi Arabia is not an island. They knew that. In the Exodus, they saw where Saudi Arabia is no longer surrounded by water. They knew. It's not an island. These things have never worked. The Malay Peninsula, well, they call it a peninsula for a reason. It's not an island. Yet the British went there in 1801, 2,800 years after Solomon, and then they name a mountain Mount Ophir in fraud. The locals rejected the name, and they still do. Their tourism department calls it by its original name, Genang Ladang, not Mount Ophir. Only the British called it that. And it was fraud. Why? They didn't want anybody to know that the Philippines is the land of gold. Why? This is how important you are. You need to understand that the most powerful powers, the principalities, the highest principalities, do not want you to know that this is a land of gold and the Garden of Eden. They do not want you to know that you can tap into the physical presence of Yahuwah underneath your feet. They do not want you to know that you are in prophecy and that you will be restored. That's what Scripture says. It always has. It's always led there. Now, a couple of people will say, oh, wait, do we have monkeys in the Philippines? Do you have monkeys in the Philippines? So you already know, because I know we have them around here. Somebody went to the Eagle Sanctuary just the other day, and they said there were monkeys there. But yeah, not only do you have monkeys, you have the actual monkey pictured in 865 BC on the walls of the palace of Assyria with Phoenician sailors bringing Philippine monkeys. Here it is right here. And if you look at this really close up, you can see this monkey. You can see his face. Look at his face here. That is a Philippine macaque. That is what that is. Very clearly. So you definitely have the monkeys. Some people say, oh, but there's no elephants in the Philippines. When you drove here today, you probably didn't ride an elephant, right? Did anybody ride an elephant today? No hands. Okay. It's okay. You used to have elephants. You've had elephants since very ancient times. In fact, you've had elephants since prehistoric times. How do we know this? The bones have been found all over the country. We mapped it out. This is our map of different research that we did. They found elephants all over Palawan, Panay, Pangasinan, even 100 islands, Cagayan, Apayao, Kalinga. These are bones of elephants that all predate King Solomon. They were here. Elephants were here in ancient times. Now, I know academics will tell you, oh, no, it was the Sultanate of Sulu who brought 600 elephants to the island of Holo in 1300. Well, that's true. He did that. Holo is not northern Luzon. How did those elephants get there? Impossible. Oh, and somehow their bones date thousands of years earlier. So it doesn't work. A lot of these things, we've heard so many things like this. We hear, other resources of ivory, because it's not just elephants. The Bible says ivory. It doesn't say elephants. It says ivory, right? So even if the elephant part, okay, throw that out. The Philippines has rhino. Where's rhino found? Rhino is found in Fort Bonifacio. They also found a very ancient one up in Cagayan, in that area. Buffalo comes from Cebu. It even is Buffalo cebuensis. So it is a native species to the Philippines, and that's ivory. In fact, even Jose Rizal wrote about how they make different weapons and things out of the ivory from buffalo in the Philippines. And even Stegodon, right? The dinosaur giant elephant, they found bones in Manila and also in Davao. See, you've had ivory all along. These are ancient resources of the Philippines. The other thing they'll tell us is, wait, but archaeology, you can't prove archaeology of the land of gold in the Philippines. Okay, let's start first and foremost, what are you looking for, right? Because the Philippines is the land of gold, right? Okay, so what do we want to look for if we want to find the land of gold? Gold, maybe? I mean, is that really that difficult? How is it that academics are saying, oh no, there needs to be archaeology of this and archaeology of that, and you got to find this and you got to find that? Come on. When the Spanish came here, Filipinos were wearing so much gold on their person. It was unlike anything history has ever recorded. So much, they thought it was fiction, except for we have found those gold pieces in archaeology. They are proven fact. This always has been. But even archaeologists know that ancient prehistoric gold has no archaeology to find other than gold itself. And in the Philippines, what did you need to mine for gold in ancient times before the Spanish? And even when the Spanish came, you know what you needed? A basket. That's it. You didn't even need a pickaxe because Philippine gold was literally sitting on the ground and just below the surface. That's what made this the ancient land of gold. They didn't have cranes. They didn't have backhoes. They didn't have all of the mining equipment that we have today. That's why they didn't even find gold in South Africa until 2,000 years after Solomon, because it's deep in the mountains. But the Philippines has what they call alluvial gold deposits. They were sitting on the ground. And you say, wait, that sounds like fiction. Yeah, I get it. I would say that too, except for your history says so. When Pigafetta wrote in his journal, when he came with Magellan, he said, that which is most abundant is gold. They showed me certain valleys. Wait a minute. Wait. We don't find gold in valleys, folks. We find them in mountains, right? Not in the Philippines, because the gold was on the ground. Now, so that's which most of it was gold. They showed me certain valleys, making signs that there was more gold there than the hairs on the head. That's a lot of gold. That's a lot of gold. Now, that is an eyewitness account in 1521. So the gold was still sitting on the ground at the time of the Spanish, and they say it twice, not just once. Here's another record from Pigafetta's journal. He said that in the island belonging to the king, this is the king of Butuan. This is Mindanao. This is Mindanao. This is what the king of Butuan told Magellan. He came to the ship, there are mines of gold, which they find pieces as big as a walnut or a chicken egg. Wow. Okay. Sounds like fiction, right? This is history. Pigafetta was not a fiction writer. He didn't write novels. He wrote history. He was the documentarian for Magellan, endorsed by the King of Spain. This is as valid as history gets. And they try to say, oh, this is fiction. No, it's not fiction. Where did he get it from? He tells you, by seeking in the ground. Not by digging, not by taking a pickaxe and mining for it, not by a lot of labor. It was sitting in the sand, in the ground. Wow. And we already know gold panning, right? I mean, you've had gold panning, but even Job talks about the gold of Ophir being panned from the streams. Wow. That's Job 22:24. Then shalt thou lay up gold as dust, and the gold of Ophir as the stones of the brooks. So they were finding the gold of Ophir in the rivers, in the streams. It was all over. Why isn't it still there? It is! You're still number 2 on all of earth. Wow! And by the way, there are rice farmers. Of course, they won't come out and declare and announce it on the news, and I don't blame them, because everybody will be at their house tomorrow. But they found gold in rice fields. Just digging down as low as you dig rice. In Bacolod, I think we have someone here from Bacolod, there was a gold rush there where they were doing exactly that. They were finding gold on the ground, just below the surface, not in mountains necessarily. But it's in mountains too, throughout the Philippines, no doubt. So it's not about Yamashita. You are the land of gold. You have always been. This has never been a mystery in the slightest. Now, let me take you to a piece of history here. This is from Father Francisco Colin, written in 1663. 1663, this is what he declares. And that this was really so, and that the principal settler of these archipelagos, that's the Philippines, he's writing in the Philippines, was Tarshish, son of Javan, together with his brothers, as were Ophir and Havilah of India, as we see in the 10th chapter of Genesis. Are we crazy? But there's a lot of crazy people with us if we are. This is historic fact. The Spanish well knew where they were coming, and they knew that they were going to get gold here. This was a land of gold. Why was everybody, including the Portuguese, why were the Portuguese afraid to come to the Philippines? They knew it was the land of gold. They even map it on a Portuguese government map. I'll show you. Why didn't they come to the Philippines? Because the Philippines had ancient ships as large as the Spanish, according to Pigafetta. You were a force, and you will be again. Do you know, when I was in Bacolod, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, something like that, not too long ago, I picked up a newspaper in the hotel. And the headline article on page 1 said that the Philippines was now building their own navy once again. That's prophecy come to life right here, right now. See, we are in the age where these prophecies that I'm about to share with you, they're happening now. We don't wait. We're ready now. It doesn't need to wait for another age or for our children or children's children. No. We do it now. Now, in 1601, Antonio Gavao writes that Luzon is Ophir and Tarshish. 1627, Dominican Gregorio Garcia wrote that the Philippines is Ophir and Tarshish. 1891, the former Prime Minister, Pedro A. Paterno, wrote a book, Conjectured Anthropology, and he said that the Philippines was Ophir. 1891, this was still known. This was still known. We've only lost it in the last 100 years. Prior to that 100 years, the Philippines as Ophir, Tarshish, Sheba, the Philippines as the Garden of Eden is historic fact, documented. Now, this is not something that anybody can really question because we can go to maps. But the other thing is that Tarshish, all right, who's Tarshish? Tarshish was a Greek. So how did he get into the picture? It's the ships of Tarshish that brought Ophir, Havilah, and Sheba to the Philippines. His payment for that is he received land in the Philippines. Mindanao, basically. Now, in doing so, here's this really odd thing, and they try to explain it away in the media. But did you know that here in, especially Davao, you have several Filipinos who somehow have a whiter skin. Now, some of that's times it's the Spanish, and mixes otherwise. But you have Filipino parents that are pure Filipinos that they know of in their bloodline. And somehow they're having blue-eyed children. Well, Greeks have blue eyes. That would make sense. So why is that the case? Well, we saw the same in America. There was something they called the Lost Colony, right? And they were left there. The ships went back to England or whatever. They came back, and the colony was gone. It was lost. But then they found DNA traits of white people in Native American Indians. Where did that come from? The Lost Colony. They bred into the Indians in the area, and they migrated around. And that's exactly what happened here with Tarshish. And that's why you see, even in Davao, you see this phenomenon of these blue-eyed children that have two Filipino parents that cannot track any white people in their DNA. They don't know how did they get blue eyes? So then some doctors will say, oh, it's a disorder. Really, having blue eyes is a disorder? I don't know about that, doctor, but I don't think so. So wait a minute. You've heard a few people that agree, but, well, some people come to us and they say, yeah, but what does Israel say? Like that would even matter. Because if Israel admitted that you were Ophir, they'd admit that they've been covering it up for 2,000 years. Oops. Oh, but one did. Because there's a Jewish evangelist that came to the Philippines named Amir Tsarfati. Now check out this clip. This is phenomenal, what he's admitting here.
In the Spanish maps that led the explorers to the islands, the name was Ophir. Did you know that? How many of you knew that? The biblical name Ophir appears in Spanish maps describing the Philippines. Ophir. Ophir appears, by the way, both in Genesis, a name of a person, all the way in the books of the prophets, as a place of great source of gold. Wow. Yes. So it starts
Amen.
from there. Also, by the way, both in Isaiah 24 and Isaiah 42, there's a beautiful description of how the name of the Lord will be praised even in the islands. It says,
what islands? The Philippines. Now, this is a Jewish evangelist that came here and admitted that the Philippines is Ophir and Tarshish. Wow. He admitted it. Now, what was he doing? Actually, we know the person that brought him here, his manager. And she told us he was watching Solomon's Gold series on the God Culture. That's where he got that. And no surprise, because he uses things that clearly came from our research. He doesn't give us credit, but it doesn't matter. He affirms the research. See, this is fact. He probably was called out for that. Maybe that's why he doesn't come back to the Philippines anymore. I don't know. But he's blown up. He's got a big ministry now. But nevertheless, he got it from us. But we got it from the ancient record. We didn't make this stuff up. This is the ancient record. When Columbus came here, he said that the islands just north of the equator, right where the Philippines are, that they were Ophir, Tarshish, the Garden of Eden, and Arsareth. Arsareth is Second Esdras language. We'll cover it a little bit tomorrow. And in Second Esdras, it says that that's where the lost tribes went. Some of them. And so does Amir Tsarfati, by the way. He also followed that research because we've done that research. So Columbus in his age had identified very specifically where the Garden of Eden was in the Philippines. That's what he says because he created a map. And he used two maps. He says in his journal that both show the Philippines as the land of gold and the land of silver. Wow. Specifically, Luzon and Mindanao are on these maps as the ancient lands. So we know that in 1519 or so, you have the Spanish government document, and in the Spanish government document, it even equates the land of Ophir with a place called, in history, it's called Lucos. And that's been a tough one. Gee, who are the Lucos? That must be Japan because, well, there's a tribe there that has a kind of, sort of, maybe sort of similar name, yet it's not. And they fail to even look at the Philippines because the Lucos are the Ilocanos of Ilocos. Even mapped as so in northwest Luzon by Pigafetta. These aren't mysteries. They've always been known. And it's even easy to just put it together. So, but we know from the map from GMA, I'll use their map, that it's the Philippines, that's Ophir and Tarshish. But here's the thing with Columbus. Now, what we know about Columbus is he landed in the Caribbean, right? He landed in the Americas. And we know that. Columbus would have been so sad. He would have been super sad to know that he did not land in the Philippines. He thought he landed here because he's going around and he's saying, oh, Haiti, right? Well, they call their nation Fete. So, oh, that must be Ophir. Okay, that's stretching it there, Columbus. You should have known better. But see, he didn't know the distance across the Pacific. No one did in that age. You can't fault him. No one did. He's really, ahead of the time. But I'll tell you this. When a guy shows up in a ship and there's already people there, he didn't discover anything. How does that work? We say he discovered America. There were already people there. They discovered it before him. Same with the Philippines. Magellan came here and Magellan discovered the Philippines. Really? Because people were already living here. You discovered Magellan. He didn't discover you. Now, here's the thing with Columbus. When you look at a map and you look at what Columbus says in his documentation, Columbus is saying basically that the Garden of Eden is right here in the north part of South America, Caracas, which is Venezuela. Okay. Now notice this, it's right there and it's on the 10 degrees north of the equator. Now let's go to the Philippines where Columbus was actually heading. What's 10 degrees north of the equator? Visayas. He was headed to Visayas. He was headed to the Philippines. He just didn't make the distance because he didn't know it. Magellan knew because he completed the mission. And he made it to the Philippines. So all of these things that he was naming Ophir and Upaz and Tarshish and, saying that they were those lands, then renaming them in Spanish, of course, all of these places are right there in the area of Visayas and Mindanao. That's what he was naming. He thought he was in the Philippines. He saw the tropics, he saw the plants, he saw the beaches, and he thought, this must be the Philippines. Ophir and Tarshish. It wasn't, and we know it wasn't. The King of Spain knew it wasn't because he then hired Magellan to still go to Ophir and Tarshish in the Philippines to find a passage through the Americas. And he came here, and he specifically charted his course to Visayas, Philippines. Now, we know that there was a map created by, and the one thing they debate, in academia they love to strain gnats, the Bible calls it. They love to take a little thing and say, well, no, Columbus didn't create that map. His brother did. Okay, so I really don't care whether Columbus created or his brother did, but here's a map from the Columbus brothers, and it's according to, by the way, the National Library of France, who studied this map for 30 years, yet you will not find it in a single textbook. You want to know why you can't find it in a textbook? Because paradise, the Garden of Eden, is in the Philippines. That's why. They do not want us to know. Check this out. This is the map created by the Columbus brothers, or someone very close to them. It has Columbus's research. Now, right now, you see a marine chart here on this side, but in this circle here is really a map of the world, and that's where we're going to get to. This is amazing. When we blow up this circle here, this is what we see. We see Africa, we see Sri Lanka and India, we see the Burmese Peninsula, Burma, Myanmar today. We see the Malay Peninsula here, and if you were traveling east, you go around the Malay Peninsula and head north, northeast of the Malay Peninsula, and China is marked Cathay right up there on that map, so it's southeast of China in the South China Sea. And that giant island there is named Paradiso Terrestro, meaning Latin for earthly paradise or Garden of Eden. And it's the Philippines. It's always been the Philippines. This is dated to 1490. They knew the Philippines was the land of gold and the Garden of Eden. Never a question. Never. But this goes way back further than that. Now, that's the map that Columbus created, and they can argue over that. That's okay. Let them go argue, because Columbus used 2 other maps, so we can put this together indisputably. One map he used is a map from 1492, the map of Martin Behaim. Martin Behaim is a German, but he was hired to create the map by the Portuguese king. So this is a Portuguese government map showing the Philippines as the land of gold and the land of silver in all of history. It's right here on this map. Now, I'll show you. We'll blow it up in a minute. But you can see this map in 1492. The world was starting to take shape, and you can see Africa. You can see Sri Lanka, India, Burma. You can see the Malay Peninsula, Sumatra, Java Minor. Here's Borneo right there, the big island. And then as you go northeast of Borneo, you go east of Indochina and southeast of China. What archipelago is there? The Philippines. It's the only option. There's nothing else there. This is the Philippines, and within that square, remember, this was commissioned by the Portuguese government. That's called history. This is a Portuguese government map from 1492, well documented as such. Columbus said in his journal he used this map to chart his voyage. Magellan told Pigafetta, who wrote in his journal, that he used this one map and only this map to get to Ophir and Tarshish in the Philippines. And where did he land? In the Philippines. Exactly where he charted. But here you go. Here's a blow up of these islands, and this is amazing. So you can see this is Java Major here on the bottom. All right, so we're northeast of Java Major, and you have all of these islands, right? Okay, it's not 7,000, but it's still a lot. All of those islands are the Philippines. Every single one. Now, they're southeast of China, they're east of Indochina, they're northeast of Borneo. We know what that is. Anyone calling themselves an academic that cannot read this map and says otherwise is just being dishonest. But they're educated in a paradigm, so it's no surprise. But here you go. Look at this island here, this big island. It's just south of the equator here. Now, that's a little too far south, but it's northeast of Borneo. So we know what it is. The giant island northeast of Borneo, what do we call that today? Mindanao. On this map, it's labeled Argyre. Now, Argyre is Greek for Tarshish, the land of silver. It means silver. Mindanao is on a map in 1492 as the land of silver. Wow. And then you have, if you look up here, Chrysos. All right, that's Greek for gold. Right? That's Ophir in Hebrew. So the land of gold is Luzon Island. In fact, look at the shapes of these. Look at Luzon Island here, and then look over here to the left. Look at Luzon on a map. You see the little curly Q at the top. You see the other indentation at the top. You can see even other elements. That is Luzon, even by shape as well as by position. Labeled the land of gold. And then you have Mindanao, And look at the top of Mindanao, look at the shape, and then look at the shape of this island. It is exactly like Mindanao. They even knew the shape. They knew that this was a land of gold and a land of silver. That was not a question, and that's 1492. Wow. If you look at a cleaner view, you also see, and it's labeled on the other map too, this island over here, it's to the right of Luzon, it should be to the left, but that is labeled Philis. Philis is the ancient name for the land of pearl. That is Palawan. So there it is on a map in 1492 in the Philippines, regardless. And these things are not a mystery at all. You even have islands, or actually shoals. It says here, it references Maniola. What do you think Maniola could be in the Philippines? Maybe Manila? I mean, it's pretty obvious, you would think. And it says that there are magnetic shoals there that the ships wreck on. And that's famous for the South China Sea. They have a lot of shoals where ships were wrecking, especially in ancient times. So it's all there in that map. We see that Columbus said, I used this map. The map I just showed you, Columbus says, I used that map to chart my voyage. End of debate, scholars. There's nothing to debate. He said he used one other map, 1474. This is a map by an Italian named Toscanelli. It's not as famous because it's kind of crude the way it's drawn, but check this out. There's Chrysis right there. It's the same shape as Luzon, just as we saw in the 1492 Baha'i globe. So the land of gold is still there. Columbus knew that when he was coming to the Philippines, he was coming to Ophir and Tarshish and the Garden of Eden. That is indisputed fact. There is no one who can challenge that successfully. And again, Pigafetta's journal says that Magellan used the same map from Martin Baha'i, Martin of Bohemia, to chart his course. Now, here's what Magellan did. And this is what most historians miss, because they don't read Pigafetta's journal. They're reading textbooks. They're reading scholarly materials, but they're not reading the original documents. And when you just read the original document, we find out that Magellan corrects all of the cosmographers, all of the map makers before him, including Ptolemy. And he says that he charted a course to 13 degrees, and it's going to say between 13 and 12 degrees. What's between 12 and 13 degrees north of the equator in the Philippines? That's Leyte, Samar. Where did Magellan land? Leyte. Right there. Right where he said he was going. So this is what Pigafetta documented as soon as they got through what they call now the Strait of Magellan. He said that they would approach nearer to the land of Cape Gatacara. Now, Gatacara may not mean anything to you, but if you go back and you read Ptolemy's map, Ptolemy labels an area Catagara or Catagara, same thing. And that's what he's referencing. And he's saying that Ptolemy was wrong. He says, with the pardon, that cape, with the pardon of cosmographers, for they have not seen it, is not found where it is imagined to be, but to the north, 12 degrees or thereabouts. What's there? That, my friends, is very clearly Leyte, Samar Leyte. So Magellan knew he was coming to the Philippines. That's not a question. And he called it Ophir and Tarshish. He even wrote it in his brother-in-law's journal. And Magellan wrote very clearly, many times, that he was going to Ophir and Tarshish in the Philippines. And he mapped it. We showed you the map. And then we showed you the two maps that he used. This is not a debate, folks. This has been settled all along. So basically what Magellan was saying is that when you look at Ptolemy's map, right, from about 200 BC or so, something like that, I don't know the exact date, this is labeled Catagara, right here. And what he's saying is that this is actually not 10 degrees south of the equator. It's actually between the 12th and 13th degree north of the equator. It's 21 degrees further north. In other words, Ptolemy was wrong. And yet the British only used the Ptolemy map to claim that Ophir is in the Malay Peninsula and areas like that. Magellan corrected that. He was the expert on the topic. These things are not disputable, and we've had that all along. He scratched out in his brother-in-law's journal the people called the Lucos that I told you about, which is the Ilocanos of Ilocos. He scratched it out and wrote in Ophir and Tarshish. That journal used to sit in a French museum and is documented in a French archaeological journal. You won't find it today, but the documentation is still there. Even Pigafetta located that, and you see these Lucos, they saw them all over the place. That is not a shocker at all. So let's get into some maps. I'm going to show you some maps that will blow the hair off your head. So get ready, because Bishop just grew his back. So, no, but seriously, this stuff is amazing. And what is more amazing is that it's been there all along, and we don't know it. We don't learn this stuff, even in college. We don't learn. Yet we can find all of these maps that say the Philippines is Ophir. We can find all of this history that says that the Philippines is Ophir, and yet it's a bad word to academia. That tells you right away it's a control line of the colonial powers, who still are in power, by the way. Colonialism did not end. They may not have slavery directly anymore, but they have economic slavery on a larger scale. It's even worse. But check out this clip. This is funny. This is how they look at maps. They put on their racist glasses, just like this guy. Okay, so that's really funny, but the reality is this is what academics are doing today. And they do it because they're told to do it. This is how they're programmed. This is how they're taught. In college, to be a professor, you better toe the colonial narrative. It's time for that to end. We're done with it. Let's just read the map for what it says. Let's take off our racial glasses and look at the Philippines for what it is. Because maps have shown for 6,000 years that this is Ophir in the Garden of Eden. But what they do is they say, okay, so here's a map of Southeast Asia, but, nothing to see here. Okay, let's look at it now. I can't tell you how many authors we've caught. And we've caught them by the tail and exposed many. But authors like Charles E. Now, an American, in the, I think, 50s he wrote. And he wrote all about, and he wrote some good information. But then it's like, you lost your brain? It fell out of your head? Maybe. Because he says, Columbus said he was going to the islands northeast of the equator. And then he says, oh, that must be Japan. Hello, you forgot to check the Philippines in the way there? Yeah, not very bright. Yet they do this all the time. It's called propaganda, right? It shouldn't be a surprise because we are under a system that will race to the beast and serve him in the end. We know that's what our Bible says. And you're seeing that today. They're already lining up. They're getting in line. World leaders all over because their economic benefits or whatever. So now we cover these maps in the Garden of Eden Revealed, the book of maps, which we released just maybe 3 or 4 months ago now, something like that. It's not that long. But here's one of the big things. There's this place called Zipangu, or Sipangu with a C, Sometimes you'll see it with a CH. And this land of Zipangu is so much of a mystery. Where could it be? Oh, it's Japan. How's it Japan? Well, because it's named Japan. Right. Who named it Japan? Not the Japanese. You know who named it Japan? The British. Why? After this, not the other way around. Because they claimed that Japan was this place called Zipangu, the land of gold of Marco Polo. Marco Polo was journeying in the late 1200s. And in the late 1200s, he met with Kublai Khan, who was the big, emperor in China. And Kublai Khan told him about a mission that he had to the land of gold. Oops, they forgot to read. He says he went southeast of China. Japan, just saying, Japan's not southeast of China. Shouldn't be that hard. He said there were resources there that don't exist in Japan. He even talks about a white pepper. He saw white pepper. White pepper doesn't grow in Japan, but it grows natively in the Philippines. There are tons of things in the narrative that you can break it down, but if you do, even these, here's 4 that we'll break down just right now quickly. It's southeast of China geographically. How do we know that? Because he goes from 2 ports, they leave 2 ports in southeast China, and they go southeast of that. That's called the Philippines. It's not Japan, right? Now, how do we know they went southeast? Because he says it's 1,500 miles from that port to the land of gold. Well, Palawan is 1,500 miles from that port in China. So that fits. Oh, wait a minute. Then he goes another 1,500 miles to Vietnam. Oh, wait a minute. Palawan is 1,500 miles from Vietnam, nautical miles. Oh, that fits. But Japan is over 3,000. That doesn't fit. Hello. These things should be easy for academics to figure out, and yet they're not even trying. So then it says, there was a gold palace that Marco Polo talks about. A palace of gold? Where's the gold palace in Japan? Oh, so they go back and they find that there is a Buddhist temple that has gold leaf on the walls. It was built 100 years after Marco Polo. So how do you say that's what Marco Polo is writing about? It didn't exist. Oh, wait a minute. Did you know the king of Butuan says he had a palace with walls of gold? In Pigafetta's journal, an accurate historic account of a palace of gold. He said it was his house, but what does a king live in? A palace. They also had cannibal legends, right? They were eating people. Now, they're legends. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. I'm not going into that. But here's the point. The Philippines has cannibal legends everywhere. They're all over this country. There's cannibal legends everywhere. Now, whether they're true or not doesn't matter. But get this. You even see them in Chinese documents where they write about cannibals in the Philippines. You know what you don't see in any Chinese document, nor any Japanese document? Cannibals. There are none there. They have no history of it. They have no legends of it. It doesn't exist. So it doesn't work. And then the last one is rhinos. Now I know some will say there's no rhinos in the Philippines today. No, there aren't, because they're extinct, because under Spain especially, they were over-harvesting ivory because it was such a sensation. So elephants went extinct, and so did rhinos. Now that shouldn't be a surprise, because we have found ancient rhino bones that date all the way back to prehistoric times in the Philippines. They found some in Mindanao, and they found some up in the Cagayan Valley. So we know that they were here, and there are legends and actually valid history. Even in Pigafetta's journal, it talks about rhinos in the Philippines and trade of rhino horns in the Philippines. So not a mystery at all. But here's what we know about this story. We know that when Marco Polo said he went to Zipangu, we know that he was talking about the Philippines We know that from Columbus. Because Columbus said that Marco Polo was dishonest. And he actually rebukes Marco Polo and Kublai Khan and says they should have disclosed that that land of gold is the same land as Ophir. Says Columbus in his journal. We have that entry right there, and we, by the way, we source everything. We source everything so far that when in our book, when we wrote The Search for King Solomon's Treasure, we then publish a separate 300-page source book of sources. They're all there that you can go through, you can read the book, and page by page, you can look at the actual source that we use. This is fact, folks. The Philippines is the land of gold. The Philippines is the Garden of Eden. I showed you already the 1492 map, but did you know that on that map, there's a giant island in the middle of the Philippines, and it's called Zipangu, the Chinese name for Ophir, the land of gold, which is all the same place. Same thing, you see it on the 1474 map. Those are the two maps used by Columbus, so they were there. You also see a 1458 map, where Zipangu is actually mapped just north of Borneo. What island's just north of Borneo? Mindanao. It's the Philippines. It's not Japan. Japan's not just north of Borneo, unless you put on your racial glasses, where you can't see the Philippines. It's the only way that an academic can do this, because it's not academic, that's for sure. We have a wood map. This one was carved in wood, and it shows Zipangu in the Philippines, just off the coast of Indochina, east of Indochina. That's called the Philippines on any mapping, credibly. Here's another one in 1510, the Jagiellonian globe, same thing, Zipangu's in the Philippines. 1520 here, the Schoner globe shows Zipangu in the Philippines. Here we have 1520 again, Zipangu was in the Philippines. All right, this is 200 or so years after Marco Polo, and the world knew that the Philippines was the Zipangu. Yet somehow, Japan got named Japan. Well, again, the Japanese don't call it that. Understand, the Japanese call their country Nippon or Nihon. They don't refer themselves, I mean, unless they're using the British term, but they don't generally refer to themselves as Japan, because they know better. And let's be clear, the Japanese are not making the claim. We even cover an article from Japan today, and it makes very clear that there is no true connection that Japan was ever this Zipangu, the land of gold, which again is Ophir. Here's another map from 1560 with the Philippines as Zipangu. And then here's a map. This is incredible. Look at this blow up right here. This is the Philippines right here. This is Borneo right here. You can't really mistake it. And what's that giant island in the north part of the Philippines? That's Luzon. That's 1744. They still knew that the Philippines was Zipangu, the ancient land of gold, which is Ophir, same place. It really could have been far easier if scholars would just listen to Columbus, who did the research. He didn't get there, but he did the research. His research was accurate. So again, they put on their racist glasses, and that is the only way that they can look at these maps that way. Let's go to the two oldest maps of the world. Oldest maps of the world. Oldest maps ever created, and academia doesn't even know they exist because they're from the Bible paradigm. Bible scholarship doesn't know exist because these two books have been removed from the Bible canon. Yet, they both have maps that lead to the Garden of Eden in the Philippines. That's what they say. They don't call it Philippines, but it's in the position geographically of the Philippines. The first one is the book of 1 Enoch. If you wonder whether 1 Enoch is scripture or not, we don't, again, need to take a vote today. However, just know that Jude quoted it 5 times. In fact, Jude quoted it by name, saying that the prophet Enoch authored a book, and now I'm going to quote for you a whole paragraph out of his book. And the paragraph exists in the first chapter of 1 Enoch, word for word. Kind of hard to dispute that. But scholars do. Oh, maybe it was another book of Enoch. Oh, you mean it's not the one that has the exact paragraph? It has to be another one? What's that? Willing ignorance is what that is. Now again, you don't have to induct it into Bible canon, but it has geography. And the geography is valid. Enoch took a trip around the earth, and here's what Enoch saw. Enoch says that he went to the desert of Arabia. Now we know where that is. We all know that Saudi Arabia is the desert of Arabia. So that's not a real difficult one. So we know the starting point, though it was in the North Pole. Some try to argue that that was Israel. Doesn't matter. He was north of that, and he went to the desert of Arabia. So we'll pick up there. Then he says he headed east. He's going to the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Righteousness. That's what he says. Now, in doing so, if you're going east of Saudi Arabia, you're not in Africa. Africa's out. You're not still in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's out. Those are the two biggest theories out there for the Garden of Eden, probably. Another one is Mesopotamia. We're going to pass that in a minute. Just hang on. Okay, so then, from Saudi Arabia, he heads east, he says, to another desert. Okay? Look at a map of deserts of the earth, and there's only one option. The next desert to the east is the Great Indian Desert. So you're in West India. Okay, so Enoch now went from Saudi Arabia to West India, and now he says he's going to go further east. So the Garden of Eden is not in Mesopotamia. No, because that doesn't come from the Bible. You know where that comes from? That is the occult creation myth. You have Bible scholars inserting the occult, saying that creation happened between the Tigris and Euphrates when the Bible never even mentions the word Tigris, even one time. The word is Hiddekel in Hebrew, and the Hiddekel River is very clearly, according to Genesis 2, east of Assyria. But here's the problem. The Tigris River is the west border of Assyria. It can't be the west border of Assyria and be east at the same time. These are not scholars, at least not on this topic. They're not even trying. And we see this all the time. Okay, so then he says, once he heads to the desert, then he heads further east. Now he says he's going to the land of cinnamon. Now, it just so happens that science has identified that the origin of cinnamon on earth, they believe, is an area from Sri Lanka to Myanmar. Okay, so he's basically just east of India, somewhere between Sri Lanka and Myanmar. Then he says he heads to the land of spices. Gee, could that be the Spice Islands? Well, we don't have to guess because he tells you the whole time, even now, he's on the Erythraean Sea, which is what? The Indian Ocean. He now says he's going to exit the Indian Ocean. Once you exit the Indian Ocean, you're by the Malay Peninsula. And he went northeast to the Garden of Righteousness. Well, that's the Philippines. The Philippines is northeast of Malaysia. The prophet Enoch said that he went to the Garden of Eden in the Philippines. Mapped it. The data is indisputable. Again, we've never seen a Bible scholar actually map this. So they'll pick up the directions and they'll usually get it wrong because they're looking for a word association in the middle without saying, well, wait a minute, where was he before that? And where is he after that? So wait a minute, if he's there before and there after, he has to be somewhere in between, right? In the middle of those two directions. And they'll literally say, oh no, he was over here. Well, that doesn't work. It's not logic. Now, that's the prophet Enoch. He said he wrote that before the flood. It's the oldest writing in all of history. It's older than the Sumerian tablets. But because it's the paradigm where they copy it over, that changes things. Now, then you have the book of Jubilees, where Noah left a map where he divided the earth between his three sons. And when you put this on a map to pen and paper, which I've never seen anybody do, I cannot believe that we appear to be the first ones to do that. That shocks me. But nevertheless, what you find is this, and it's 2 chapters. I can't go into detail. But here's what he says. In Shem's mapping, he says he goes beyond India, so he's east of India, to the far east, to the border of Shem and Ham. And on that border, near it, is the Garden of Eden, just north of that border. Now, then, when he's mapping Ham's directions, he gives the ultimate detail. And he says he's heading from Africa, he's heading to just to the right of the Garden of Eden, which means he has to head, when he's in Africa, he has to head west, across the Atlantic, across the Americas. Yes, Noah knew about the Americas. He gives them a name. He calls them Farah. He does not call them America because America is the name of the plumed serpent, otherwise known as Satan. That's what they call. Quetzalcoatl, he has different names, but he's the plumed serpent. And his name was America in Central American and South American countries. And that's why they call those continents America. They say, oh, they're named after Amerigo Vespucius. Really? So wait a minute, they misspelled his name? And they mispronounced his name? And he was a famous explorer? Huh? That doesn't make any sense. Why do they say stuff like that? Because it's propaganda. So here we have, he's going all the way across the Pacific, and he ends up just to the right of the border of Shem. So Ham goes up to there, then he goes south a little pace, and then he goes to the west, and he goes into the Indian Ocean. But that border is then defined as all the mountains of fire. Now, that may not make any sense because volcanoes, right? But let's go to Indonesia. Indonesia has a name for its 147 volcanoes that form a natural border. And those 147 volcanoes in Javanese are called Gunung Gunung Api. Gunung Gunung is mountains of fire. Wait a minute, Noah named that in 2500 or so BC. And the name survives in the Javanese. So we can find that there. And then Noah describes it in both suns' directions. That you find that border right there, which would be the border of Sabah, Malaysia. Oh, I'm sorry. Sabah, Philippines. Right? Because that is a fact. That's historic fact. In fact, that's Bible fact. But we won't go there today. Okay, so this border, just north of it, is the Garden of Eden. Now, the Garden of Eden is within the earth. It's enclosed. It's always been, because the Hebrew word interpreted garden, it's a garden, it's a planting of trees, yes. But its first definition is not garden, it's enclosure. It's an enclosed garden, as if enclosed by a fence, according to every concordance I've read. So the reality is, when we're looking for the Garden of Eden, we're not looking for it up here. We're looking for it within the earth. And that's where it is. But it matters because the land matters in prophecy, which we're going to get to in a minute. Okay, so where does this place the Garden of Eden? Just below the Sulu Sea and Mindanao. Visayas and Mindanao. So when Kibuloy was saying this is the land of the Garden of Eden, he didn't know what he was talking about. But you know what? Actually, there's historic fact behind that. This has always been the land of the Garden of Eden. It's not his place, but it's within the earth underneath Visayas and Mindanao. And that's why Columbus charted a course there. That's why Magellan charted a course there, because they were going to the Garden of Eden in the Philippines. This stuff is so well proven and so well documented over thousands of years that it led to a thinking in mapping. They call it the TO map. Now that may not make sense, but you can look at the picture, see the T, see the O, right? The O is the ocean that surrounds, right? Except that's not an ocean. You know what that is in the Greek? It's called Oceanus, but it's not an ocean. It's the rivers from Eden, because they're worldwide. And it actually matches Genesis 2. I doubt I'll have time to go into that today much, but if you look at our rivers from Eden theory, it will blow your mind, because the geography in Genesis 2 is exact. It's perfect. but it's defining a worldwide water system where the rivers are on the bottom of the ocean floor, and modern science has found them. Even admitting it, they just don't know that it's the rivers from Eden. But they say that there are rivers on the bottom of the ocean floor. The fountains of the great deep still operate within. So there's Oceanus surrounding, that's the O. And then the T are the seas, basically. All right, this is a name for the Mediterranean. The Tanis is actually a river in Russia. The Tina River is what Noah called it. And the Nile River in Africa, of course. And you basically have a breakdown of just 3 continents. But this is the ancient perspective, right? Some people look at this and say, oh, you'd have to be a flat earther to look at that map. No, you'd have to be stupid not to look at the map because it's history. Doesn't matter what their perspective was. It doesn't matter whether you believe the earth was or not. It doesn't matter. It's history. They believed that paradise, look at that, in the top there, paradise is right there in Asia. It's right in the middle. It's right next to the Tropic of Cancer. Where's that? That runs through Taiwan. The Philippines is right next to that, last I checked. These maps, this perspective has been saying this for thousands of years. Thousands. This is a teaching map. This isn't actually a map, but we could show you tons and tons of maps that show the same perspective. But I'll take you to actual maps that are historically documented. Here's one from 43 A.D., right? This was like a decade after Yahusha was crucified, right? We're talking 1st century here. And they created a map that has the Philippines. Yes, they knew of the Philippines in the 1st century, and they knew that it was what? It's marked Christ. It's southeast of China. That giant island up there, southeast of China, is Luzon. And it's marked gold, the land of gold. And Argyre is just south of there. You skip a pace, which would be Visayas, and you get to Mindanao. So you have Luzon and Mindanao, Philippines, on a map in 43 A.D. as the land of gold and the land of silver. 43 A.D. Those were the first maps created. We didn't create maps before that. We have written directions. Now, the creator of this map was Pomponius Mela, and he said that he was following the documented history over an 800-year period, basically, of the Greek route to the land of gold and the land of silver. And he mapped it in the Philippines because he knew that's where they went. Then you have 50 A.D., some say 70, but it's 20 years, big deal. It's the 1st century. The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. We created our own because there are no good maps of this one. And same thing. You have the land of gold southeast of China in the South China Sea. It is the Philippines. It has always been. Then you have a map in 124 A.D., a giant island southeast of China, Christ, gold, Ophir, Philippines. This is documented fact. I am showing you credible maps from history. We got these from the U.S. Library of Congress, some from Wikimedia, but still valid maps confirmed. These are accurate in their orientation. Here's a map in 416 and another one in 650. And the one in 416 shows Christ River, Gold River. So it doesn't show it as an island, but it shows it southeast of China, which is about where the Philippines is. But then this one nails it. This is 650 A.D., and you can see up here, Syrica. Syrica is the name for China. That's the ancient name for China. So Syrica's China, and southeast of Syrica is a giant island named Paradise. But we know what it really is. Today, we call it Luzon. It's the Philippines. Paradise was in the Philippines. This is an Italian map that the Pope well knew. I'm going to show you another one in a second that's going to blow your mind. But he shows paradise, and then next to it he shows Argyre and Christ, the land of gold in Greek and the land of silver in Greek. And then there's this one. This is one of the most monumental maps ever created. It's so monumental, this guy called Cosmos, the Indian voyager, in 550 AD, 550, he created a map of the world. And on his map of the world, he draws paradise as the Philippines. This map was so famous, he wrote a book called Christian Topography. This was Bible data. And the Bible map was so famous that 600 years later, this map that you're seeing on screen, this is not another version of it, this is his map. This map appeared in the Vatican Sinaiticus Gracia. The Greek edition of the Vatican Bible had this map showing the Philippines as paradise, the Garden of Eden. When the Spanish came here, the Pope knew that the Philippines was the land of gold and the Garden of Eden. That was not a question. It's proven. This map was used for more than 1,000 years. They knew. Still in the Vatican to this day. Still there. Not a mystery at all. Now we also know that this guy knew what he was talking about. They call him the Indian voyager for a reason. He went to the Indies. Oh wait, how do we know that? There's scholars that say, oh no, he didn't make it that far. Yeah, he did, because he happened to draw a species that only exists on 5 islands on the entire planet. And they're all in Indonesia. So he definitely made it to the Indies. It's called a pig deer. And this is it. He drew it here. And you can see the tusks and everything. He called it a pig deer. And then you can see the pig deer from Indonesia is endemic. It's native to Indonesia and only Indonesia. Nowhere else on earth. So we even know that he was credible that he even came this far almost. So he knew what he was talking about. When he gives us directions, he says that you're heading out of the Indian Ocean, and basically you turn to the left, which would be north, and then there's the Garden of Eden right there on the right. Folks, that's the Philippines. It's always been the Philippines. It's nothing else. And again, his map shows the exact same thing. We also see the Pisan River on his map. But where's the Pisan River? It empties into the Philippines. And what's the Pisan River? The river from Eden that surrounds the land of gold, the land of pearl, and the land of onyx stone. By the way, the strongest onyx stone in all of earth comes from Romblon, Philippines. So every one of the 3 resources in Genesis 2 is right here, scientifically proven to be the Philippines, number one. It's always been well documented. And we can find that today very easily. Now we have his written directions, as we do with all of these maps. In the book we cover some. In our series on it, we'll cover even more of that kind of data. But I'm not going to go into all that today. But you can see the maps. You can see there's a perspective. Now I'm going to show you a bunch of maps here that are just going to be boom, 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 boom. Because I'm going to tell you about the perspective. It's called the Baitis map perspective. He's a famous monk that also followed the Indian voyager Cosmos, and he's mapping the same thing. But look at his map. What is this? That's Adam and Eve covering themselves with fig leaves, with a serpent, and the tree of, well, that's not actually the forbidden fruit, because the forbidden fruit is Lanzones. Now, just so you know, we have a video on that called Forbidden Fruit. Check it out. That's right out of the book of 1 Enoch, because he describes the leaves, he describes the fruit as growing like bunches of grapes on a tree. And then we go into the Philippines and we find 3 legends, 2 on Camiguin Island and 1 in Paete Laguna, that say that the word Lanzone originates in the Tagalog word lason, for poison, right? That's why it has that name. Now, the legends say that Lanzones were once poison. They're not poison anymore, right? Okay, they're okay. I eat lots of Lanzones. But They were poisoned, and there's this, in the one in Laguna, there's an old man who's traveling. His name's Mangsilo. And Mangsilo travels, and he's in an orchard of Lanzoni's trees. That's all he sees for, as far as he can see. He gets tired, he lays down, takes a nap. And he has a dream. And in his dream, knowing that Lanzoni's is poison, he wouldn't touch it. But in his dream, an angel came down from heaven and pinched the poison out of the Lanzoni's. Therefore, Lanzoni's was good to eat. So Lanzoni's is fine to eat, but it is the forbidden fruit according to the prophet Enoch. How about that? And by the way, that makes sense. It should be a fruit from the Philippines, not an apple. There is no text that ever says it's an apple. So you see this tree of life here, Garden of Eden, everything there. So you can see it on this map. Now, there's a page crease here, and I'm just going to explain this on this one, and then the next I'll just flip through quickly. This page crease right in the front, because this is a 2-page spread, that's where the Tropic of Cancer is. And you're in Asia up there on the top of the map, just like the TO perspective I showed you. Same thing. They're following that perspective, and what's there? It's just southeast of the Tropic of Cancer. That's called the Philippines. It's nothing else. There are no other options. And this is a mindset that went on for like 1,000 years. You can see the same mindset here with even more detail, because they have the Garden of Eden, they have China, there's Indochina, and there's Argyre, there's Christ. It's all on this particular map. So it has a lot of detail. This one's the same perspective. The page crease just south is the Garden of Eden. That's the Philippines. Page crease, south, Garden of Eden, Philippines, with Christ and Argyre next to it. There you go, Philippines, 1047, 1050. This one is fascinating because it actually labels the area where the Philippines is with 2 islands off the coast, which would be Luzon and Mindanao in history, because that's where it always leads. It calls it Evelath. Now in Latin, that's Havilah, which is the land from Genesis 2 that's surrounded by gold, pearl, and the onyx stone. So it's all there, super well documented. 1086, you got the same perspective. And there's the Garden of Eden with Argyre and Christ next to it. See, the land of gold and the Garden of Eden are inseparable. You cannot separate them. They are one in the same, because Genesis 2 says that it is the land of gold, pearl, and the onyx stone. Then you have 1100. This is a map on Dover Castle in Britain. They have this there in England, and it shows the Philippines as paradise, as the Garden of Eden. So the British know this. They don't want you to know, but they know. Here's 1120, and this one's fascinating because some come to us and say, well, you can't produce a map with Ophir. Oh, really? Here's one right here. I don't need to, because just like your New Testament Bible is of the 1st century, it's written in Greek, so we're maps. So they called it Christ instead of Ophir. That should be pretty well understood in academia, but there's many that don't get it. Now look at this map, and you can see it's blown up here on this side, and you can see right here you have a sun. Why? Did you know the prophet Enoch lays out the course of the sun as starting in the Philippines, in the Far East, and there's map after map that actually, they have it labeled Sub-Solanus. We cover this in our book. It's really detailed, so I'm not going to go into it. But Sub-Solanus is always mapped just next to the Philippines. Sub-Solanus is the origin of the sun and the east wind. It's where the sun was created, according to Enoch. Enoch even goes so far. Now, I know Japan claims to be the land of the rising sun, but understand that comes from the Chinese. And in the Chinese perspective, the sun comes from the east, so it's no surprise they would call it the land of the rising sun, because to them it was. But the Bible has an origin point at creation for the sun, and that's Sub-Solanus in Latin, and it's marked in the Philippines numerous times. Enoch even describes that particular land in the month of Abib, which is March, April on our calendar today, that would be their hottest month. That's not Japan. But that is the Philippines. Your hottest month is March, April. Abib, the first Hebrew month. Because creation happened here by many accounts. Now, so you look at this and you see the sun and it's labeled paradise. So that's the Garden of Eden. And then right off of that, you can see here, and we have a flag there, O-F-I-R, that's Latin, for O-P-H-E-R, Ophir. One and the same, or O-P-H-I-R, either way. So this is on a map as Ophir. Yes, that's the Philippines. Then we have this famous map in 1154. And I know there's a lot, but this is my point today. There's a lot. I'm only going to cover a little bit. There's so much more. This isn't even remotely debatable. Now on this map, this is created in 1154 by the famous Muslim cartographer. See, the Muslims knew exactly what the Philippines was. You know what the Muslims called the Philippines? Wak Wak. Wait a minute. Where'd they get that word from? It's Tagalog. It's from the Philippines. They called it Wak Wak because the land came with a vampire legend. Wow. These things are so easy when you understand that this is the Philippines. It all vets very naturally. Now on this map, created by the most famous Muslim cartographer who ever lived, Al-Idrisi. He's from Morocco, but even the Europeans hired him because he was such a famous cartographer. He created this map, and up here, he's showing all these islands. The big island there is Sri Lanka, by the way, and then I'll work out all the others. But here, check this out. You see these blown up here, within the square, there's Wak Wak. You know where it is? Mindanao and Visayas. It's where it is. It's where it is. So, now, I don't know if Wak Wak is real or not. It doesn't matter. The legend is real. It's historically documented, and it's on maps. This is the Philippines. Now, we know it is an area because when we map it out in area, we put flags on here so it was really clear. You can see Burma, which is an island, but it's not. Okay, we know that, but that's all right. Okay, you can see this really long island here at the top there. That's the Malay Peninsula. We don't have to guess because it's labeled Malay. Kind of easy, right? Okay, so now you're at the Malay Peninsula. Now you go east of the Malay Peninsula. Now we highlighted this whole area in pink. That is the Philippines. The orientation's a little weird. The map's upside down. Yes, that's not abnormal for that era. But nevertheless, that whole pink area is in the Philippines. And what's in that area? Zangi, or Zipangi, or Zipangu, the Chinese name for the Isle of Gold. What else is in that area? Wak Wak, Wak Wak, and Wak Wak. What else is in that area? Zahab. What? There's an island named Zahab? Oh, if you've studied Hebrew, you know that's the word for gold. There's an island named Gold in the middle of Visayas. It's right there, clear as day, Zahab. Then you have Lamang. What? You read that, right? You read that in school, Biagni Lamang, right? That's the oldest writing in the Philippines, but you know what? Lamang is not a person. Lamang is the story of the Philippines. And it is profound. Because there's prophecy in that story that will raise the hairs on the back of your neck. Lamang grows up. He becomes very wealthy, just as the Philippines did as a nation. He had so much gold that when he produced a dowry for his wife up in Bacnoten in northern Luzon, gives the names, it's right there. So when he purchased his wife's hand in marriage, he had so much gold that he told his mother, just go to the room and bring all the gold out of the room. That's how much gold he had. Wow. That's the Philippines, because that's the way it used to be. Oh, you don't believe that? I'm going to show you. That's historic, documented fact. That is the way it used to be. And it's the way it will be again. Okay? Now, but Lamang actually, he gets married, he experiences a wonderful life, but then he goes diving. And when he goes diving, he gets swallowed by a shark from the sea. Yeah, well, you know what? Magellan was the shark from the sea. The Spanish were the shark from the sea who swallowed the Philippines, and the Philippines died. However, here's the rest of the story. A diver jumps in the first time, and he tries to get the bones of Lamang, but he's unsuccessful. He dives in a second time, and he comes up with the bones of Lamang. He puts them on the shoreline, and Lamang resurrects from the dead. Because the Philippines will resurrect from the dead. You will rise. Messiah said that, so we don't have to guess. Now, this is just a question for you, but I find this fascinating. We're not political. We don't really care about politics, though we're very happy to see some things. But I'll tell you this. What's the name? This was written in 1620. 1620. What is the name of the diver that jumped in to rescue Lamang, the Philippines? Marcos. Where did that come from? And that's what it says in 1620. Now, it doesn't matter what your politics are. Some would say maybe it's the first one. Some would say maybe it's the second. Some would say, nope, it hadn't come yet. Doesn't matter. The point is it connects to the Philippines on such a level. Is one of the most powerful families historically in the Philippines, yet 300, 400 years later? Oh, that's weird. It's just weird. So these things, I believe, were prophecy that they hid from the Spanish. They wrote some of these stories, and you can find prophetic messages in there. What is the moral of this story? Not Marcos. The moral of the story is the Philippines rises. The Philippines rises from the dead. And that's happening right now. That is happening right now. We don't have to wait. So I could take you through map after map after map after map. Here's 1220, here's 1235. The Philippines is the Garden of Eden. We could keep going, and I could take you through these maps for another day. There's that many. And I could explain each one, but you can get our book for that stuff. And you can get the detail. You can watch the videos and you'll see the detail. But here's my point. My point is academia has no point. Bible scholarship has no point when they write in their concordances that somehow this land of Ophir and the Garden of Eden are somewhere else. It doesn't even matter where else. I've even seen them say Sir Francis Bacon goes into Peru, right? And he says, oh, Peru, that must be Ophir. Well, okay, all right. Come on, Sir Bacon, what is it? Why is it Ophir? Because Peru has a P and an R. Oh, okay. Now, here's the problem. That's called scholarship. And that was never scholarship. That is a ridiculous way to even look at it. But even if it made sense, you would think that they would just take another few steps to try to then prove it. Well, see, that's the difference. We've proven this out from every angle that we can imagine. And so far, everything that we're seeing is that the Philippines is, in fact, Ophir and the Garden of Eden. It's there time and time again on map after map. It's there in your history. Okay, let's talk about history. This is a big, big one. A lot of people don't realize that the Philippines does have history prior to Magellan. And I hear this all the time, that, no, there's no history before Magellan. Yeah, there is. There is so much history. It's a massive treasure trove of history that has been suppressed. And they're not putting it in textbooks. And who cares what the reasons are? That's not what they should be doing. They shouldn't be going through and censoring history in any sense. For instance, Pigafetta's Journal. They'll teach from Pigafetta's Journal, but they will not teach the things that I'm going to show you today. They're not going to, even the things I already have, because we've covered a little bit of Pigafetta. I showed you 1663, 1601, 1627, 1891. The Philippines is known in documented history as Ophir and Tarshish. It's not even debatable. Again, we saw the maps too, and that's history. Maps are history, so you can't disinclude them, yet academia has disincluded pretty much every one of these maps. And again, we found over 80. And actually, there's even more than that. Those are 80 that we can find in high resolution so we can publish them so you can read them. We found maps from China. The Chinese map Zipangu as Luzon Island, Philippines. We found 2 Chinese maps that show that. We found a Korean map that shows Luzon Island as Zipangu, Philippines, which is Ophir. This is not a mystery. Your neighbors knew. Everybody knew. The Italians knew. The Chinese knew. The Koreans knew. The Portuguese knew. The Spanish knew. Even the British knew. There was a British explorer named Sebastian Cabot in 1525. After Magellan, he was hired. And in his contract, the King of Spain wrote in that he was to go to Ophir and Tarshish, specifically just north of Malaysia. We all know where that is. It's called the Philippines. And there's no other way to really look at that. So then you have, so here's the breakdown. The breakdown is that Luzon Island is Ophir in all of history. Visayas, Cebu, is Sheba in all of history. And by the way, I can't cover them today, but we cover many maps, especially in the book, where Cebu or Visayas, or even the whole Philippines, is actually, it bears the name Siba. Sometimes it's Siba Diba, but see, you know what that means. The British look at that and they don't understand it. Whoa, what's Sheba Diba? No. It's Sheba Diba. That's how you read it when you understand where you are, right? These are things they miss in translation because they have their racial glasses on, right? Okay, so we have the Mindanao is Tarshish. So Mindanao has always been the land of silver and gold. Tarshish is known for all of those things. In fact, one great resource that defines the land of Tarshish is tin. It says that in Ezekiel, I think it's 27. Tin. Oh wait, tin doesn't come from the Philippines, does it? Oh yeah, it does. They've been mining tin in Mindanao for hundreds of years at least. The Spanish wrote about it. We have documentation of the Americans writing about it. So we know that that is historic fact. That tin has been mined here all along. Oh, something sounds like it's ringing, but anyway. Okay, so the Garden of Eden is basically below the surface within the earth. It's not in the ocean, it's below it. It's within the earth. It's enclosed. And there you are. It is basically below the Sulu Sea and Mindanao and parts of islands in Visayas, like Cebu, Negros, areas like that. They're all there in the same area. So these things have been well documented. This was the land of Elda, according to Jubilees originally. It was renamed after Adam named Eve. See, Eve didn't have a name in the Garden of Eden. She didn't have a name. She wasn't named until the exile. She was named, oh no, her name's not Eve. She was named Hava. Ah, Hava. The land is named Havilah because it comes from Hava. How do I know that? Havilah in Hebrew means one who suffers pain that brings forth. What's that? Childbirth. Labor in child. What was Eve's curse? Labor in childbirth. So it's named for Eve, where the word has been changed to actually, in meaning, match Eve's curse from the Garden of Eden. and that is the Philippines, once named that. Now, this is also called, in 2nd Esdras, a land called Arsareth, which leads to the Garden of Eden and the land that the lost tribes migrated to. And if I have time, I'll go into that more tomorrow perhaps. But check this out. We have writings that in 1574, I think this was, 1574, there was a guy, a Spanish Augustine friar, named Fray Rada, and he attacked the Philippines. He said Filipinos were barbarians. He said that Filipinos were savages. He said that Filipinos don't have any manners. Yeah, right. He's never met a Filipino, obviously. He's probably got the best manners of any nation on earth, and that's ingrained in your culture for thousands of years, there's no doubt. And that's not Catholic. So you see a lot of things in this nation that don't have an origin in Catholicism. They don't have an origin in Islam. They don't have an origin anywhere else except for the connection that you had to Israel from ancient times. The Queen of Sheba would have learned about circumcision from Solomon. Maybe even earlier. I don't know. But at least from there. She asked him tough questions, and I'm sure she asked him about theology and things. Okay, so Guido de Lavazares, he's the captain general at that time, who's in charge of all the captains from Spain. And he responds to Fray Rada. He calls Fray Rada ill-informed, calls him a liar, basically, and a whole lot of really bad names. But then he responds and he says, no, this isn't true. This is what Filipinos are like. And it was not just signed by him, but all the captain generals. So the captains of Spain responded, and what they did is they set 3 classes of people in the ancient Philippines. And this tells us all. Now what you also see here, to the right, this is an illustration, an actual historic illustration. And it is called the Boxer Codex, and it's from 1595. Now here's what's fascinating about this. I'm going to show you these pieces have been found in archaeology. So this is not fiction. This is historic fact proven in archaeology. Why? Because the Philippines is a land of gold. It has always been. There's no other nation on earth that has this history. Go look for it. I challenge you, I dare you, go look for it. You will never find this anywhere else. This is the only land. However, here's what he said. Talking about the upper class, he says, there are some chiefs in this island who have on their persons 10 or 12,000 ducats worth of gold in jewels. All right, I know. What's a ducat, right? Okay, let's transpose that to our modern terms. In US dollars, the average person in the upper class was wearing 1.5 million US dollars in gold on their person. Wow. That's called history. That's documented fact. Where do you see that on any place else on earth? Nowhere. You won't find it. Search for it, I dare you. Now he says, regarding these, they had other wealth, land, slaves, mines, etc. But then he said, there are so many of these chiefs that they are innumerable. In other words, they could not be numbered. There were at least thousands of them. Thousands of people that wore gold like this from the Boxer Codex. So we have an illustration. We have actual history documented by several, not just this guy. And then he talks about the middle class. Likewise, the individual subjects of these chiefs have a great quantity of said jewels of gold, which they wear on their persons, bracelets, chains, earrings of solid gold, daggers of gold, and other very rich trinkets. So even the middle class even the middle class, wore a lot of gold. Look at that. They still have a lot of gold. Where's your gold? Some of you have some. Where's your sacred thread? Where did all that gold go? Well, the Spanish took it. Obviously. They took it. But it's okay. There's more. You're still number 2 on all of earth. Still. You had so much gold they couldn't even take it all in 300 plus years. So, is that there? Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, so then you have Guido de Lavazares takes it a step further. And he talks about the lower class, and he tells you that even the slaves, even the slave class, wore gold trinkets, gold jewelry. Everybody had gold. Antonio de Morga said in about 1609. Yeah, there you go. That's gold? Oh, nice. Nice. Everybody turn your head for a minute. No, that's awesome. But that's the thing, is that the amount of gold here, it's so much that everybody thinks it was fiction. It's not. It's documented history. This was written by historians. This was fact, again, found in archaeology. But De Morga said, he who does not have gold must be poor and wretched. Wow. The ancient Filipino, no matter who you were, all had gold. All. And all wore it in public even. Imagine that. That is historic fact. We're going back there. Amen? So the lower class, and here's a picture from the Boxer Codex. Look at this dude. He has more gold than he has pants. That is crazy. That is an historic illustration of an actual person wearing that much gold. Why? Because this was the land of gold. Gold was everywhere. And it still is. Might be in the mountains, but you're still number 2. Still number 2 on all of earth. Then you have, De Morga talks about it at length. He's not the only one. But check out this clip. This is from the Ayala Museum. This is archaeology. What it's showing here is the sacred thread that was found
Ating piyesa ng gold
in
collection
Surigao.
ng Ayala Museum. Halos 4 na kilo ang timbang nitong gintong sablay. Wow. Uy, napakabigat.
Wow.
Uy, magkakakalo ka nito. Ang bigat.
What was that? Look, when she got it, when she put it on, she went, ooh. It was so heavy. They used to wear that. Probably it was the firstborn son, that'd be my guess, who received the sacred thread. But this was found in Surigao. Now, when they found it, here's what they did, because academia does this, because they can't see things outside of their box, their paradigm. And they said, oh, this was the Butuan kingdom. They forgot to go read the Boxer Codex. Those people in the Boxer Codex, they're in Luzon, not Butuan. So this is nationwide. This is not just one area. So it's disingenuous and dishonest for them to say that this only belonged to the Butuan kingdom. No, this belongs to all Filipinos. This is your history, and this was your family. At one time, this was you. Now, this sacred thread was found in the Surigao treasure in the 1980s, but it was illustrated in the Boxer Codex in 1595. This is historic fact. There's nothing to debate on that. Now, there it is. You see it drawn. He's wearing it. You can see the necklace that he's wearing and she's wearing is very similar to the one found in Surigao. On the side there, that's the necklace. You can see that the dagger handle, the handle of the dagger, gold, solid gold, there it is, found in the Surigao treasure, and there it is drawn in 1590. And then you see, and we didn't know this until they found it in the Surigao treasure, but in that illustration, he's wearing a belt of fine gold. Oh, wait a minute, Daniel mentions that. Yeah, he saw a vision, and the loins of the person who he saw, he actually was wearing a belt of fine gold of Upaz. Upaz is Ophir. Upaz is the Philippines. So we have all of this so well documented, but this is a work of art. These are finely woven threads of solid gold into this belt, and they were wearing it on their person in public. Wow. That is the Philippines. That is your history. That is your culture. It's time to take it back. Enough of the fraud in history. Let's force them to teach this stuff. Now, let me take you here. You ever hear this song? We three kings of Philippines are. That's what it should say. Because you see, this guy, he wrote another song. This is just one of his songs. And in the other song, I'll show you, he defines what the Orient is that he's talking about. He's saying that the three kings brought bright gold of Ophir. He knew that the Orient of the three kings, which is really 6 or more, but I don't have a problem with it, because the leadership would have been 3 kings. That is accurate. Where does that come from? Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. 3 kings. Ophir, Sheba, Tarshish. 3 kings. See, that precedent is there. This guy knew that. Many do in history, because it's only been the last century or so that we've lost it. So he wrote this song called When from the East the Wise Men Came, and says that they came from Ophir, the Philippines. There is no credible legend of Ophir being in Persia or Babylon, which the 3 kings did not come from. There's no such thing as Melchior, Caspar, Balthazar? Balthazar, did I get that? Okay. See, I don't even know the 3 kings because I don't want to, because they're fiction. The story of the 3 kings was created by the Catholic Church about 550 AD, right? I told you earlier about the book, the Vatican document that's been found dating back to 200 AD, 300 plus years before that, where the Vatican well knew, because it's still there. It's still there. Been translated in English even. And it says that the 3 kings came from the Far East, from the land of the Garden of Eden, which is the Philippines. Now, how do we know this, though? We don't have to guess. Now, I don't know why. You know, scholars go out this time of year, especially since, I know in the Philippines it's already Christmas, right? You have the longest Christmas celebration on the planet, and I believe there's a reason for that. It's actually biblical, but it's not. It's the wrong time of year. But the celebration for 3 months actually has precedence. But I'll go there in a minute. But check this out. David told us exactly where the wise men, the kings, would come from. Yes, they were kings. You'll go read blog after blog after blog this time of year from scholars. Oh, in Matthew, they weren't kings. They were wise men. Well, kings can be wise men, right? I mean, come on. That shouldn't be too hard for them. But I have far better for you. David said that the 3 kings would come from a particular place. In Psalm 72, verses 10 through 15, the kings of Tarshish and of the isles, that's Ophir. Tarshish is Mindanao, Philippines. They came from here. They came from the Philippines. Shall bring presents. The kings of Sheba and Seba shall offer gifts. Yea, all kings shall fall before him. Now, that never happened with Solomon. This is talking about David's future son, his future lineage, who must be the Messiah. Why? Because this one can save the souls. Solomon couldn't do that. It also says he shall redeem their soul. This is Yahusha. This is Jesus. No one else. No one else. And in this prophecy, just as we read in Matthew, he is brought gifts of the gold of Sheba from the kings of Mindanao, Philippines, Visayas, Philippines, and Luzon, Philippines. That's where the wise men came from. According to David, who kind of knew. This is prophecy in his era. But we do know they were kings, and we know they came from the Philippines. They did not come from Babylon. They did not come from Persia. And the so-called Magi in Babylon were occult Satanists. They would not be the ones that an angel would go wake up and say, hey, look at the star in the sky. So you can go and kill the Messiah? It's nonsense. It's always been nonsense. And again, that's Catholic legend from 500 years later. It has nothing to do with the Bible. It never has. I told you that Adam offered the same gifts as the kings in his first offering, and that's why it matters. Because, see, they came from the land of creation. They came from the Philippines. They came from the land of Adam and Eve. And they brought the same resources from that land: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The Queen of Sheba brought the same resources from her same land, the Philippines: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. These things have always been well documented, and they've been covered up pretty well, there's no doubt. But the reality is the Philippines has always been this famous land of gold. Even your Christmas celebration here, and we don't celebrate Christmas, but because it definitely is a pagan holiday en route. We have videos on that too. But it's odd, though, because in America, the center of our Christmas celebration was always the Christmas tree, right? Which Jeremiah in chapter 10 rebukes. Oops. Yeah, he says they cut a tree down from the forest, they take it into their homes, they make it stand upright like a palm tree, and they deck it with silver and gold. Really? I mean, come on, we know the songs. You know what Jeremiah is talking about. He's talking about Christmas. But in the Philippines, it's weird because you have the longest celebration on earth. Why? Because you're the land of the three kings. That's why. And what's the center of your celebration? A star. That's odd. In America, it's the Christmas tree. Yours is this giant star. Why? Because Matthew said the star appeared in the east sky. Oh. Did you know that Herod, when the kings came to him, he went and he asked his astrologers and astronomers, did you see that star? And they said no. He asked the Pharisees, did you see that star? And they said no. Why? You didn't see the star in Israel. There is no star of Bethlehem. That is not Bible. It ended up there in the very end. The star is the east star from the Philippines. It showed here in the east sky. This is where they saw it. Now, why did it take them 2 years? Because the passage says it took them 2 years to get there. Because they came all the way from the Philippines. If they came from Babylon and it took them 2 years, which the passage says it did, then they were not very motivated. Come on. The Messiah appears and you wait for 2 years to take a 3-week trip? Come on. That's nonsense. Nonsense. It took them 2 years to get there. That's why the 2-year journey. That's why the period. So we know these things are all in the story, and here's what's neat, okay? We prove out, and you'll have to look at the evidence. I can't possibly take you through it, but we prove out, we have a series called When Was Jesus Born? All right? You don't have to agree with us on everything, right? We're researchers, so we test. We're constantly testing things, right? But when you look at this, you'll see that we arrive at the conclusion that Jesus, Yahushua, was born in June on Shavuot, the Hebrew feast. Okay? Now, when you realize that's the day of covenant renewal, according to the book of Jubilees, then it really makes sense because that's what his birth was all about. Covenant, right? However, whether someone, takes a different date, that's fine. But here's what we find fascinating with that. Okay, so that's June. Now, we know Messiah was crucified. He was captured on Passover, and he was crucified the next morning on the first day of unleavened bread. Now, when you look at that timeline, we're celebrating the Christmas cycle here for 3 months. But that's not Catholic. Where did it come from? It's the wrong time of year. But where did it come from? It came from the feasts, because the feasts start in April and go through June. It's about a 3-month cycle. And so in the Philippines, what you've been doing is practicing, actually, probably the ancient birth of Messiah, a 3-month window from his death and resurrection to his birthday, right? For that 3-month period, it actually fits very well the cycle, and it makes sense that the land of the 3 kings would incorporate a star in the center of your celebration. Again, it's not in December. That's the birth of the sun god, so that never works. But the 3-month celebration does make sense. And now you can see where maybe that came from. So a lot of this stuff, when you put it all together, where does all of this lead? Where does all of this go, right? But let me ask you this before I go there. Is the Philippines Ophir? Are you sure? Yeah, I mean, you're certain the Philippines is Ophir? Well, then stand to your feet with me. Come on, everybody stand to your feet. And I want to take you down a road. We did this before, and it was a lot of fun. So I hope you don't mind, and you don't have to participate, but hopefully you'll want to. But we're going to say, we are Ophir together. Okay? So I'll get you started here. If we get to music. Okay, here we go. We are Ophir. 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 Yes, we are Ophir. Proven fact. This nation is the most significant land on all of earth. The prophecies that go with this abound. You can remain standing because I'm going to take you through some exciting stuff now. You know, when Magellan came, Pigafetta says in his journal, Magellan asked the Filipino, "Who is your God and how do you worship?" And the Filipino answered. This is one of the few times where we get an answer that's actually from Filipinos. So you know it's authentic. You know it's accurate. Here's what the Filipino said. We have no other worship. One God. This nation historically has one God. You do not have animism. You do not have Bathala and Anitos and all these other things that they're talking about. You were never a Muslim nation. You knew the Creator. Look at this. but raising their clasped hands and their face to the sky. This is authentic worship. You didn't even need buildings. You could just worship walking down the street. We need to bring that back. Because this is about the kingdom, and his kingdom is everywhere. Amen? Now, and that they called out to their God, what's his name? Abba! Abba! Wow! Where did that come from? That's right. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so I got to say that because Ate just mentioned it. You have an ancient alphabet here, right? Abacada, right? Okay, what's the first letter? Abba. Whoa, what's the last letter? Yah. Abba, Yah. Your alphabet starts with Abba and ends with Yah. That's impossible. How did that get to the Philippines? How did you know Abba? Because in the Garden of Gethsemane, here's what we see. We see Messiah used Abba. We see Paul twice used Abba for my Father. How did Filipinos know that? Because you knew the Creator. Because you knew Jesus Yahusha from the time he was born. Personally. You didn't need the Catholic Church to bring him. He was already here. A case can be made in his missing years that, of course, of all places, he would have visited the land of the Garden of Eden. Now, we don't have evidence of that. It's speculation. But a case can be made for it. But here's what we do know. We know the Philippines is in prophecy. We know that you're there over and over and again. Here are some of those prophecies. Calling, this is Isaiah 46:11. Calling a ravenous bird from the east, the man that executeth my counsel from a far country. This is talking about a righteous priest, or priests, plural. Either way, you can read it either way in Hebrew. But I can tell you this. We've had an opportunity to meet some great men, and Bishop Rod is among them. Absolutely among them. We also know that this is a nation known for the bird of prey. What's the greatest bird of prey? The Philippine eagle. What's the largest eagle on all of earth? The Philippine eagle. Now, I know they try to argue with us and say, oh, no, it's the harpy eagle because the harpy eagle has longer talons. Okay, there are 7 criteria. We tested them. We're researchers. And out of the 7, the Philippine eagle is number 1 in 5. It's number 2 and number 3 in the other 2. So no, there is not even a close second. The Philippine eagle is the largest by far. And you are in prophecy. The eagle is a symbol of a nation, right? It is a symbol of a nation. These are prophecies to all of you. All. But there will be leaders that rise up within, absolutely. Now, then it says, and you know this scripture, right? And we read it in churches in America too, and we thought this was for us. This was for all believers. It wasn't to me. It wasn't to believers generally. This is to the Philippines. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Keep silence before me, O islands, and let the people renew their strength. Let them come near. Then let them speak. Let us come together to judgment. Who raised up the righteous man from the east. Literally, Sedek is priest. This is literally priest. He is going to rise up priest from this nation who will judge the world. I know, judge not lest you be judged, right? Okay, keep reading. Keep reading. Because then Yahushua tells you how to judge. Because he wants you to judge righteously. righteously. Now, what does that require? It requires restoring his ways. It requires restoring his law so you have something to judge by, right? Okay, now, Isaiah 42:4. Again, Isaiah was obsessed with the isles in the east at the ends of the earth. He shall not fail nor be discouraged till he have set judgment. This is a recurring theme with the Philippines over and over. In the earth, and the isles shall wait for his law. Why? This is where he restores his law. It's not going to happen in Israel. It's not going to happen in the United States. It's going to happen in the Philippines. This is that land. You have the greatest prophecies of all time. Of all time. And they just get better. Isaiah 41:3-5. He pursued them and passed safely, even by the way that he had not gone with his feet. Why? Because he's sailing. This is Philippines. Who hath wrought and done it, calling the generations from the beginning. This is the land from the beginning. This is the land of creation, and you have been called from the beginning. The 300 years or so of Spanish conquest are nothing, and they're gone. The U.S. takeover, gone, done. This is the time for the Philippines. This is your century. This is your awakening. And it's happening already as I speak. I, Yahuwah, the first, and with the last I am he. The isles saw it and feared. The ends of the earth were afraid, drew near, and came. Because the Philippines will fear him. The Philippines will restore his ways in this nation. This is one of the greatest Filipino prophecies I think I've ever seen. Because we all know Filipinos love to sing. Well, it's in your DNA. You've always loved to sing for a reason. Because that is your calling. Every one of you. And I don't care if you can't carry a tune. I know some can, but that's rare for a Filipino. It doesn't matter. You still sing. You worship. Okay, Isaiah 42:10. Sing unto Yahuwah a new song. Now, I used to sing that. And I used to think that was for all of us. No, it's not. It's for the Philippines. Look at this. And his praise from the end of the earth. Ye that go down to the sea. Why? Because they're sailors. And all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof. Every one of you is going to sing, and the Philippines, out of the Philippines will rise a new song from the throne room of Yahuwah. Forget about Hillsong. New song, Philippines is coming soon. You will be the leaders. Even in the worship arena, you will be the leaders. The world will follow you. No other country. Now, last few. And this is one of the most profound. I mentioned this in the opening. Isaiah 60 verse 9. Surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first. That's the ships of Mindanao. Okay? You are in prophecy. Time and time again. So the ships of Mindanao first, to bring thy sons from far, their silver and their gold with them. Why? Because this is a land of silver and gold, and the ships of Tarshish are going to usher in, this is a promise, to Israel. The return of the lost tribes of Israel comes through the Philippines. The Philippines will usher in their return. When the demon, Gog of Magog, rises up and attacks Israel, there's one land on all of earth that takes a stand. It's known as Sheba, Philippines. Dodan, it's Dodan, not Dedan. He's the brother of Tarshish. Dedan is from Ham, makes no sense. It's just DDN in Hebrew. Sheba, Dodan, and the merchants of Tarshish, Mindanao, Philippines. with all the young lions thereof, shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? Thou hast gathered company to take a prey. So you're there to steal, are you there to kill, are you there to destroy? There's one nation that stands against the prince demon on all of earth, and that is the Philippines. Now that matches what Yahusha said. And we opened up with this. And I'll end here. Because Yahusha said, Jesus said, that the queen of the south shall rise in judgment with this generation and condemn it. The Philippines. Let's correct the language to the geography. The Philippines will rise. You're going to rise in judgment of the New World Order, in judgment of the beast system, in judgment of Gog of Magog. This is not small-time stuff. This is a world scale. This is a superpower scale. But your superpower isn't a military, it's restoring his ways. See, you don't need the U.S. to help you out of any kind of military situation. No. You just need to restore his ways, and he will help you. And when he fights a battle, he doesn't need many. In the story of Gideon, he had 300 against 5,000. But with him on your side, that's all you need. It doesn't matter. So Yahusha said, the queen of the south, by the way, to this day, is the name of Cebu. It still calls itself the queen of the south. So does Iloilo. So it is a Visayan representation in that sense. Historically, accurately. It's amazing that this stuff has been there in Scripture all along, and few have seen it. But the queen of the south is Sheba. Sheba is Philippines. Ophir, Sheba, Tarshish. So here's what we know. We know that the Philippines is going to rise in the last days, and you're going to rise on such a scale that no nation has ever seen what you're going to see in all of history. This is something that has never happened before. But it's going to happen not because I said so, because I'm not a prophet, but because Jesus, Yahusha, said so. Because Ezekiel said so. Because Isaiah said so. Even ancient legends say so. Your nation has always been the most important land on all of earth. This is where he chose to place his holy of holies. You tap into that. You have access. Literally, in the nation of Israel, people would pray at the temple, just wanting to be next to the Holy of Holies. They couldn't even enter in. But you're next to it every day. You wake up next to the Holy of Holies. You walk, you live, you run, you drive right above the Holy of Holies. Remember that in all that you do. Remember in all that you do that you, in fact, are the most important culture in all of history. There is nothing like you, and there will never be anything like you again. You are Ophir. You are Sheba, Tarshish. You are Havilah. You are the Garden of Eden. Indisputably, well-proven fact. Amen? So I just want to leave you with this. We're going to be back tomorrow. Now tomorrow I'm going to go into prophecy, even deeper. And the prophecies I'm going to cover tomorrow are going to blow your hair off. Because once you take this ancient geography and you plug it back into Scripture, you start to see things you didn't see before. You're going to see things tomorrow, and it's going to blow you away. We're going to cover 2,000 years of history. 2,000 years. In just 2 hours, we'll do it. and you're never going to be the same. Once you know this stuff, you can't unknow it. And I can't wait. I'm excited about tomorrow. Amen? So we love you guys. Thank you for having us. And most of all, remember your place. You are not a third world citizen. You are second to no one else. You are a Filipino. You are an ancient Ophirian. The world used to fear you, and they will again. Coming very soon. Know your place and rise in Him. Amen? Amen. Thank you for having us today.